Chapter 396. Thus, on this day, a rumor spread like wildfire in the E family's courtyard. Lady Dugu had given a plate of pastries to their young master, and for some reason, their young master was injured. Lord Ethereal was then called in for treatment. Word spread from mouth to mouth, and the rumor grew bigger and bigger until it got out of hand. In the end, Lady Dugu had personally made a plate of pastries for their young master. Their young master was touched, and the two of them had sex in the study. In the end, Lady Dugu was too aggressive and injured their young master's waist. Thus, they hurriedly called in Lord Ethereal to the study for treatment. From this, it could be seen that the ancient people's imagination and ability to tell stories were comparable to modern people's ability to gossip. However, the servants who had helped put out the fire were filled with admiration for their young master. To be able to arouse their young master's interest in pastries like that, they had to admit that their young master's taste was truly strange. When Yi Lingfeng heard the rumor, his waist hurt even more. Lady Dugu felt wronged. How could she possibly force herself on him? But if there was a chance in the future, she did not mind giving it a try. Yi Lingfeng did not know what the young lady was plotting. He only felt that there was a sinister wind blowing behind his back. Back to that afternoon. After Xiao Su left Yi Lingfeng's study, he returned to his room but did not see Chu Qingyan. The courtyard was only so big, where could she have gone? At this moment, Xining, who had just changed her clothes, passed by and was summoned into the room by Xiao Su. When she found out that her mistress was fighting with Jin Xian in the courtyard, her interest was piqued. She stood up and walked towards the courtyard. Before she got close, she heard the sound of swords clashing. He slowly walked to the side of a large tree, one hand behind his back and the other bent in front of him. His gaze fell on the two people fighting in front of him. Chu Qingyan turned around and stabbed her sword towards Jin Xian's lower body. She then sat down with her legs spread apart. Jin Xian leaped up, and his long sword drew a sword flower, as if there were dozens of swords rushing towards her. She didn't panic at all. She slapped the ground with one palm and jumped up. She held her sword in front of her body. When his long sword was in front of her, she slashed it fiercely. Jin Xian didn't expect her to give up defense and choose to attack. His eyes flashed with appreciation. But in the end, Chu Qingyan still lost because she didn't have enough internal energy. Chu Qingyan wiped the sweat off her forehead and said to Jin Xian, "Your swordsmanship has improved a lot." Jin Xian's gaze swept past her and looked at the person behind her. He said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "It's all thanks to your highness' guidance." Only then did she realize that there was someone standing behind her. Following Jin Xian's gaze, she was a little surprised. "You and young Master Yi have finished talking about business?" She didn't even think about it and walked towards him. At this time, Jin Xian nodded in his direction and left. "He's been bored out of his mind recently. There's no business," Xiao Su said indifferently. He didn't have the slightest awareness that he had hurt his good friend. Chu Qingyan nodded. This Yi Lingfeng was indeed quite unreliable. But she also seemed to have discovered something. In the past, he would only use one word to reply and never two. Now, he finally gave up this bad habit and learned to explain things to others. This was the most correct way to communicate. But Chu Qingyan didn't know that only she could enjoy this kind of communication. "I think so too. Young Master Yi doesn't need to take care of the family business?" After being together for so long, she didn't seem to see Yi Lingfeng worrying about business. "He has a weakness. He's lazy. But that can be considered a strength." Xiao Su seemed to be in the mood to chat today and said to her leisurely, "I'd like to hear more." She sheathed her sword and walked to his side to lean against the tree trunk. He doesn't want to be tied down by business all the time. So he spent a year searching for accounting experts and management talents. Then he found them and made the best use of them. Now, he doesn't need to interfere with the Yi family business anymore. Xiao Su's words carried a hint of lament. She didn't know if he was lamenting his good friend's laziness or the way he solved the problem. So, he just needs to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? Then continue to play with the flowers? Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. So, one could be lazy to such an extent. Something like that? Xiao Su didn't deny it. But isn't he afraid that if he does this, these people will have bad intentions and collude to steal all his family's wealth? She couldn't be blamed for thinking ill of others. The world was big and there were all sorts of strange things, but the human heart was the most unpredictable. Xiao Su smiled. He may be lazy, but he's not stupid. If you can think of it, so can he. He has his own unique way of handling people. Don't worry. Chu Qingyan nodded. At this moment, Ethereal walked past in a hurry. She couldn't help but call out to him. Ethereal, where are you going in such a hurry? Master, young master, it's like this. Miss Dugu came over just now and asked me to treat Master Yi's injury. I'm going to make some medicine for Master Yi now. Ethereal saw that it was his two masters and immediately walked over to report. What happened to Master Yi? Chu Qingyan was surprised. Ethereal shook his head. I don't know. I only know that Master Yi injured his waist. When Xiao Su heard this, he waved his hand and dismissed him. Go and make the medicine for him first. Ethereal left in a hurry. Big Ice Cube, I saw Lady Dugu bringing a plate of pastries to young Master Yi just now. How did she become like this all of a sudden? Chu Qingyan counted with her fingers. Allergies, typhoid, and a waist injury. This Lady Dugu is really young Master Yi's nemesis. Having an enemy is better than him fooling around outside. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. He seemed to be quite satisfied with Dugu Qing's appearance. If Yi Lingfeng knew that his good friend used fooling around to sum up his carefree life of hunting women, he would probably vomit blood. Chu Qingyan was full of admiration for Dugu Qing. She was probably the only person in the world who could torment her sweetheart to such an extent. Show me your heaven and earth sword, Xiao Su said. When she was sparring with Jin Xn, he saw the flaws in her sword moves. He might as well teach her a few moves today. Chu Qingyan, who was in a daze, unsheathed her sword when she heard him. She walked to the middle of the courtyard and bowed to him. I have embarrassed myself by waving my sword in front of Master Guan. She needed to grow, but growth was not blind. She needed someone to light her up and show her the way. And this person was right in front of her. Xiao Su's lips curled into a smile. His eyes were filled with the image of her dancing moves. Here, sand and pebbles were flying and fallen leaves were falling. There was singing and dancing and it was very lively. A person stood by the window, looking at the people coming and going in the imperial capital. He raised his eyes. Why haven't they arrived yet? Chapter 397. If Chu Qingyan heard the hoarse and lazy voice, she would definitely find it familiar. Young master, according to the news from our spies, Xiao Su's group disappeared when they arrived at the capital of Junlan. Now, they are nowhere to be found. Xuanqi Zimo reported from the side. This group of people had suddenly disappeared from under their noses. Because of Xiao Lai's strength, they didn't dare to get too close. But because of this, they lost track of them in a moment of carelessness. Oh! The dark purple figure slowly turned around, holding a glass of wine with his fingers. His expression was lazy, but his pair of phoenix eyes were extremely seductive. It has been more than a month. They should be here soon. It's just that I don't know where they are hiding now. It's really a headache. Young master, it's my incompetence, Xuanqi Zimo blamed himself. This has nothing to do with your incompetence. I heard that the Emperor of Junlan has some connections with Xiao Su. Maybe he was invited as a guest. It's just that they don't have a strong relationship. But to be able to hold him back for so long, he's quite capable. Higashio Motetsu shook the wine in his hand and watched the ripples spin non-stop, forming a small vortex. His eyes were deep and light, and it was unknown what he meant. Hearing his young master mention Junlan, Xuanqi Zimo quickly searched his mind for the recent news about Junlan. After straightening it out, he said, speaking of Junlan, I have to mention the recent destruction of the 4 vassals. Let's hear it. Higashio Motetsu was a little bored, so he wanted to listen to these interesting palace stories to pass the time. Originally, when the new emperor of Junlan inherited the throne, he had a headache because of the 4 vassals who were eyeing him covetously. And when the 4 vassals were planning to seize the throne, the situation suddenly reversed. 2 of the vassals fought among themselves, one surrendered, and the other committed suicide. Everything was a little unexpected, but soon, the new emperor killed decisively. He used this opportunity to find out the disloyal officials in the court. Using kindness and power, he quickly gathered this broken kingdom into his own hands. All of this happened in just 5 days, shocking the surrounding countries. Master Xuanqi's tone carried a hint of admiration as he recounted the information he had obtained. Higashio Motetsu's fingers paused. Decisive? A combination of kindness and authority? Act quickly? It was originally a plate of loose sand, but suddenly an invisible hand appeared and gathered them together. With a flip of his hand, he could summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. Apart from him, who else would have such courage? Higashio Motetsu curled his lips, and a charming smile appeared on his face. Get ready, they're almost here. Xuanqi Zimo, who had just finished speaking, was suddenly given an order by his young master and felt confused. Weren't they talking about Junlon just now? Perhaps because he was in a good mood, Higashio Motetsu patiently explained to his not-so-smart subordinate, the new emperor of Junlon has just taken over the throne. He doesn't have enough experience to see the big picture and have the courage to kill decisively. There are only 2 possibilities for him to be able to set up a chain of plans in one go and catch the 4 vassals in one net within 5 days. First, he hid his strength and bided his time, waiting for this decisive attack. Second, he had the help of an expert behind him, and he caught the thieves off guard. Xuanqi Zimo was awakened by this and suddenly shouted, "It doesn't make sense that he hid his strength and bided his time. If the new emperor really had such ability, he wouldn't have waited until now to be besieged on all sides." Then, there's only the second possibility. When they were in internal strife, it happened to be when Xiao Su and the others disappeared. Then, the person standing behind the new emperor is most likely Xiao Su. Higashio Motetsu nodded with some satisfaction. His subordinate wasn't too stupid. That's right. Xiao Su's character won't be threatened by others. Perhaps he had a deal with the new emperor of Junlon. Since the internal strife is over, Xiao Su and the others should be arriving. Higashio Motetsu stroked the cup and raised his almond-shaped eyes, a smile flashing across his eyes. He wondered if the little girl was doing well after not seeing her for so long. Did she miss him? Xuanqi Zimo looked up and saw his young master drinking wine in a good mood. His mood also improved. He hoped that his young master could successfully obtain that item in the Jiang Kingdom. In another part of the Jiang Kingdom's imperial capital, a figure was sitting upright on a chair. Every corner of his dark gray monk robe was flat without a single crease. The cold wind was raging outside, but he was sitting quietly in the room. Even the candle flame was burning quietly, as if it wasn't affected by the outside world. This was just a piece of pure land, quiet and peaceful. The sandalwood Buddhist prayer beads in his hand slid into his fingertips one by one as he recited the Buddhist sutra. Then, they returned to his fingers from another direction. His other hand was placed in front of his chest, palm facing right. If it weren't for his fingertips and lips moving, this person seemed to be standing still and aloof from the world. After he finished reciting the mystic Dharma Lotus Sutra, his closed eyes slowly opened, like a water lily that had been sleeping for many years suddenly moving its petals and then blooming. His clean eyes were devoid of sorrow or joy, but they were filled with compassion for all living beings. He placed the prayer beads on the table and pinched his fingers as if he was calculating something. Finally, his lips curved slightly. She was already in the Jiang Kingdom. He believed that she would arrive in the imperial capital soon. Su Jian's mind was filled with the image of the girl who had cunningly argued with him about Buddhism. She shouldn't have appeared in this world, but she did. Her uniqueness was destined to cause a bloody storm in the Sichuan Kingdom. After he had foreseen the future, he had planned to stop her. He found that she was very spiritual and had the root of wisdom, so he thought of a way, which was to guide her into Buddhism. Perhaps his approach was too reckless, or it could be said that when things reached an extreme, they would move in the opposite direction. She was suspicious of his intentions, so she was wary of him in the end. Later, her words reminded him that if the future could be predicted, then many things would be changed, because people tended to seek benefits and avoid harm. He didn't know what kind of impact his prediction would have on her, and what kind of changes it would bring to the Sichuan. Life was unpredictable. He couldn't guarantee that his predictions were accurate. Now that the King of England had disappeared in the Sichuan kingdom, the situation in the Sichuan kingdom would change because of this. But he didn't try to predict what would happen next. Because she said that fortune-telling was inaccurate, because fate couldn't be predicted. At this moment, a young monk knocked on the door and walked in. He bowed to Su Jian and then said respectfully, "Master Su Jian, our abbot said that there will be a Dharma conference tomorrow. He hopes that Master Su Jian can give a lecture to the benefactors who will come to listen to the Dharma if you have time." "Young master, you can reply to the abbot. I will be there tomorrow." Su Jian nodded politely. "Thank you, Master Su Jian. I will take my leave." The young monk retreated. "King of England, Benefactor Chu, I will wait for you here." Chapter 398. The next day, the group who had rested for a while was preparing to head to the capital of the Jiang Kingdom. However, they were informed that the capital would not be open to the public for the next 2 days, and citizens were forbidden from entering or leaving. Although Chu Qingyan and the others were surprised, they had no choice but to stay in the courtyard for 2 more days. Everyone who was about to leave sat in the main hall, drinking tea and discussing matters. "Why is the city being sealed off all of a sudden?" Chu Qingyan frowned. They had not received any news before, so it could be deduced that the city being sealed off was a last-minute decision. Yi Lingfeng was holding his waist, his face pale. It was obvious that he had not recovered from his injuries. When he heard Chu Qingyan's question, he shook his head. "I did not receive any news either, but I have sent someone to investigate. I believe there will be news soon." Something must have happened in the capital for the order to seal off the city. They want to capture someone. Xiao Su calmly picked up his teacup, as if he was not affected by the sudden change in the itinerary. Chu Qingyan nodded. The big ice cube had been in the dark for so many years, and his foresight was definitely higher than most people. He was able to point out the reason with just one sentence. The imperial capital was a place where people traveled to and fro. If such an order was suddenly given, the citizens would definitely panic. However, if the person who gave the order insisted on it, then something big must have happened in the imperial capital. At this moment, the Yi family servant who went out to investigate returned. "Young master, I heard that an assassin sneaked into the palace last night. The assassination failed, and now the assassin is hiding in the capital. His Majesty ordered the city to be sealed off to find the assassin." The news was no different from what Big Ice Cube had said. Chu Qingyan looked at Big Ice Cube with admiration. Coincidentally, he turned to look at her and accepted her praise without hesitation. "Did you find out who the assassin was?" Yi Lingfeng asked in a bad mood. They were about to enter the city, but this happened. Who knew how long they would be delayed? Just thinking about it made him unhappy. The servant shook his head. "I did not find out. His Majesty ordered the news to be sealed off. There are rumors that the assassin is a woman from the harem, but no one knows who it is." "A woman from the harem?" Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. This was probably not a baseless rumor. However, for the Jiang Kingdom's emperor to be so enraged, it was likely that this assassin had not only challenged his authority as an emperor, but that the target of the assassination was someone he cherished. Thinking of this, Chu Qingyan sorted out the relationships of the royal family of the Jiang Kingdom in her mind. In fact, the royal family of the Jiang Kingdom, the Jiang Kingdom. In the Jiang Kingdom, the royal family took Jiang as their surname. The current emperor, Jiang Xiong, was as majestic as his name suggested. Before the Jiang Kingdom was handed over to him, the territory was very small, less than 1/3 of today's territory. He lived up to his name. He inherited the throne at the age of 15. That year, he began to lead the army and subdued the nomadic and disobedient tribes around him. There were some swamps and barren mountains at the border of the Jiang Kingdom, which had no value at all. However, he had a unique vision and included those places in his territory. It took him another 3 years to make the surrounding small countries submit to him and merge into the Jiang Kingdom. After the territory of the Jiang Kingdom reached his expectations, he withdrew the army and returned to the capital. Then he worked hard to govern the country, selected capable people, and devoted all his energy to the construction of the country. The Jiang kingdom gradually became prosperous. After decades, the Jiang kingdom was no longer a small country that was so weak that everyone could bully it. It was a powerful country that could be on par with Junlan and Sichuan. Although this golden age of his was built with iron hooves, and his cruel and violent image had been deeply ingrained in the eyes of other kingdoms long ago, in the eyes of the people of Jiang Kingdom, he was the good emperor who brought them a peaceful and happy life. Speaking of this, one had to mention Jiang Xiong's good name. He doted on his wife, loved his son, and loved his daughter. In this era where men were superior to women, it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. However, this Jiang Xiong had always been the same. All the love in the harem was given to Empress Jiang Huang. It was said that this Empress Jiang Huang met Jiang Xiong when he led the army to war. Later, she followed him to expand the territory. It was said that this Empress Jiang Huang was an extraordinary woman. She did not lose to a man when leading the army to war. It was also said that this Empress Jiang Huang had a devastatingly beautiful face. This devastatingly beautiful Empress Jiang Huang gave birth to 2 sons and a daughter for Jiang Xiong. The eldest prince was 20 years old this year. He was the current crown prince, Jiang Yunli, the crown prince who was admired by thousands of people with both wisdom and beauty. The second prince was 19 years old this year. His name was Jiang Yunjing. He was cultured and refined. He liked to recite poems and write couplets. He was also good at making friends with scholars who shared similar interests. The third princess was 16 years old this year. It was said that Jiang Xiong loved his empress very much. Every time Empress Jiang Huang was pregnant, he would happily wait for the little princess to be born. He hoped that he could have a daughter like Empress Jiang Huang. Unfortunately, it was always a dragon child. He was quite sad. After waiting for 5 years, he finally got a phoenix girl. He doted on her in every way possible. It was as if he wanted to pour all the fatherly love that he could not give to her. He named her Empress Jiang Huang. It was said that this little princess did not disappoint Jiang Xiong's expectations. She was slender and elegant and had a gentle personality. She was a good princess that the people praised in their hearts. After Chu Qingyan sorted out the information she gathered from Hualing, she made a conclusion. A dedicated emperor who worked hard for his country married a beautiful empress. They gave birth to a smart and handsome crown prince, a cultured second prince, and a beautiful princess. In short, this family was very good. Chu Qingyan was quite satisfied with her conclusion. However, these 5 good members of the imperial family made Chu Qingyan unable to make a move. Because the imperial family was harmonious and the country had good weather, they did not need anything. Thus, there was nothing they could use. A headache was a headache. However, in this era, it was really rare to have such a dedicated and not promiscuous emperor, as well as a harmonious imperial family. If there was a chance, she wanted to meet this family of 5. They were actually able to make the people talk about them enthusiastically. They did not complain and resent the people in power like in other countries. It had to be said that the emperor of Jiang country really had a way of governing the country. At this time, Xiao Su's voice made Chu Qingyan pull back from her thoughts. Did you find out how long this lockdown will last? This was also what she was concerned about. She looked at the manservant and waited for his answer. The manservant replied, "This servant found out that regardless of whether the assassin is found within 2 days, the city will open and let them pass." This kind of news would not be spread among the people. However, the Yi family had connections and was not afraid that they would not be able to find out. However, the news of the assassination target was sealed by the emperor of Jiang country. However, the emperor of Jiang country did not know about it because there were only 3 women in the imperial palace: Empress Dowager Jiang, Empress Jiang, and Princess Jiang. She was thinking whether this assassination would be a breakthrough for them to find the ice crystal flower. Chapter 399. 2 days was not a long time, but to Chu Qingyan, it was like cutting a piece of meat. This was because the time they had left was slowly decreasing as time went by. She finally understood what it meant to pass by in a flash. Time was like sand between her fingers. Bit by bit, she could not hold on to it. but waiting was also torturous. Especially in Jiang country's capital, where even a bird could not fly in. Hualing could not even bring people into the city to gather information. On this day, Chu Qingyan was practicing her sword again, but for some reason, every move was not smooth. Instead, it was exhausting her mind. She stopped and looked at the sword in her hand. A sense of irritation filled her heart. At this time, a series of slow footsteps approached. Chu Qingyan heard the sound and looked up. It was Du Guqing. Chu Qingyan put away the irritation in her heart and smiled. "Big Sister Dugu, why are you here?" Usually, at this time, shouldn't she be in the kitchen helping Yi Lingfeng boil medicine? Thinking of this, Chu Qingyan could not help but want to laugh. She heard from Xining that Du Guqing had already burned 3 medicine furnaces. The servants in the kitchen were so scared that they all applied to the Yi family steward for a transfer. No matter if it was to wash the stables or sweep the leaves, it was fine as long as they were not in the kitchen. It could be seen that Du Guqing's killing power was unparalleled. "I finished boiling it 2 hours in advance today and already sent it over. But he has not woken up yet, so I went back to my room first." A gust of cold wind blew, blowing the long hair over her shoulders. She reached out and pushed the hair in front of her behind her ear. Because of this action, Chu Qingyan saw the wound on her hand. Although it was bandaged, it was still hard to not see the deep and shallow scratches. Chu Qingyan's eyes moved slightly. This young miss who usually did not do any household chores could do this for the man she liked. It was already very admirable. But it was a pity that she did not know if that man would be moved. "Little Qingyan, I was going to go back to my room, but I saw you practicing your sword here, so I came over." Du Guqing did not notice her gaze on her hand as she leaned against the tree trunk behind her. She seemed to be sleepy as she asked in a daze. Seeing her sleepy look, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. "If you're tired, go back and rest. What are you doing here?" She brewed the medicine 2 hours earlier, and it was only dawn today. It could be seen that she didn't sleep much last night. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but urge her to go back and catch up on sleep. "It's not too late to go back later. It's just that I saw that you were impatient, so I came over to chat with you." Du Guqing smiled slightly, her red lips parted slightly, and the wind blew her jade belt, while the sun shone on her pomegranate skirt. Cheng Yanlua's eyes were bright and kind. Her smile was bright and beautiful, but when she wasn't, she was cold and elegant. As for the Du Guqing in front of him, she was the water spirit. She was extremely beautiful, and her eyes were filled with emotions. Chu Qingyan thought that if Cheng Yanluo was described as bright and beautiful, then Du Guqing would be bright and beautiful. One had excellent medical skills but a sharp tongue but a soft heart, while the other was careless and stubborn because of love. If she were a man, she would definitely be subdued by these 2 extraordinary women. Unfortunately, she wasn't. "You can tell that I'm in a bad mood?" After Chu Qingyan came back to her senses, she was a little surprised when she heard what Du Guqing said. Du Guqing nodded honestly, then pointed at her face. "Because your thoughts are written all over your face." Chu Qingyan was a little embarrassed when she heard this. She didn't think that she would be so obvious. Before she could say anything, she heard Du Guqing continue. "Little Qingyan, my mother once told me that we can have emotions, but smart people are good at hiding their emotions. That's why they live for a long time. If a person doesn't know how to hide their feelings, then they won't live long. Little Qingyan, you're still young, but you have to learn to be a smart person." Chu Qingyan was stunned. She didn't expect Du Guqing to say such words to her. They seemed to be careless, but they were actually very reasonable. However, she was even more surprised that these words came from the mouth of this seemingly unscrupulous and innocent little girl. Suddenly, her face was pinched, and a pair of watery eyes magnified in front of her eyes. A voice as pleasant as a lark sounded in her ears. "Little Qingyan, are you wondering why I suddenly said such words?" Chu Qingyan snatched her face back from her hands. Although she was a little shocked, she didn't show it on her face. She raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, "Are you trying to say that you're just a little fox pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? You little girl, you're a little interesting." Du Guqing touched the hairpin on her head, her expression still bright and lovely. "But I'm not pretending to be a pig. That animal is too ugly and doesn't match my noble status. I should say that I'm now a cute rabbit. She had learned the word cute from Chu Qingyan. At this time, she felt that it was very suitable for the situation, so she used it. My mother said that one has to be smart, or else one will accidentally lose one's life. I see that your group isn't simple. In this world, people are fickle, scheming, and fighting for power is a very normal thing. But in order to live a long life, you have to be smart and muddle-headed. Listening to Dugu Qing's earnest teachings, Chu Qingyan would be lying if she said that she wasn't surprised. Because if it was an ordinary young lady, she wouldn't say such words. Ordinary young ladies only cared about women's arts. How would they understand these fights for power? She narrowed her eyes. Dare I ask, Big Sister Rabbit, how did you see that our group isn't simple? Dugu Qing yawned, but she was still patient. Because the person in front of her was Xiao Su's fiancé, and Xiao Su was Yi Lingfeng's good friend. After so many days, she could see that Yi Lingfeng respected this good friend of his. Then, if she could pull Chu Qingyan into her camp and let Chu Qingyan talk to Xiao Su, would Yi Lingfeng change his view of her and accept her? Although the feasibility of this plan wasn't very high, it was better to kill 3,000 innocents than to let one go. Dugu Qing suppressed the sleepiness in her body and said slowly, "Your family's servants are extraordinary. They're not ordinary guards. Perhaps even the nobles can't afford to hire such guards who can fight against 100 people. They're well-trained and have strict military discipline. They might be from the army. I'm not very knowledgeable, so I don't know which country's nobles are from. But I can be sure that you're not from Junlan, nor the Shang Kingdom, and definitely not from Jiang Kingdom." There was one point that she didn't mention. In fact, just by looking at Xiao Su's noble aura, she could tell that he wasn't from an ordinary family. Don't ask her why she was so sure. It was because she grew up in such an environment. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that this little fox in rabbit skin in front of her was really hiding something. It seemed that she had underestimated her previously. Then dare I ask, Big Sister Dugu, what advice do you have for us? She didn't believe that Dugu Qing suddenly said all this without a plan. Chapter 400. I don't dare to advise you. Dugu Qing waved her hand casually, then suddenly leaned close to Chu Qingyan with a faint smile on her face. Little Qingyan, can you do me a favor? Say it, help me get it, no matter what. Chu Qingyan was taken aback by the sudden enlargement of her face. Could this elder sister not be so flustered? Her watery eyes flickered with evil intentions. This favor is very simple. Tell your fiancé to tell him to speak to Yi Lingfeng. Advise him not to be a womanizer outside, and then cherish the people in front of him. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan leaned against the tree trunk even more leisurely, her eyes full of kindness, a sly smile flashing across her lips. She pretended to be surprised and said, "How do you know about my relationship with the big ice cube?" Dugu Qing raised her brows and smiled. Little Qingyan, everyone has eyes and ears. You didn't deliberately hide it, so it's very easy to find out. Chu Qingyan nodded in understanding. But you forgot one thing. We haven't gotten married yet, so I can't do this pillow talk. She spread out her hands in distress, expressing her helplessness. Why are you such a blockhead? Don't be so formal when doing things. You can just indoctrinate him normally. Dugu Qing was exasperated at her failure to live up to her expectations and poked her forehead with her finger. Chu Qingyan cursed in her heart. She was just taking the opportunity to tease her, but she was caught by her to educate her. It seemed like she had really shot herself in the foot. She avoided her finger and said calmly, "It's not impossible, but you said to cherish the person in front of you. Where is the person in front of you?" Dugu Qing heard this and immediately retracted her naughty finger. She pinched her handkerchief with both hands and returned to her gentle and ladylike appearance. She blinked her eyes delicately. Little Qingyan, I am. Chu Qingyan felt like she was going to vomit out last night's dinner. Sister Dugu, don't you think that sometimes it's more useful to do it yourself than to have others help? Although the two of them were just fooling around, she still believed that the relationship between a man and a woman depended on the efforts of both parties. If others interfered, it was very likely that it would be more of a hindrance than a help. If I could do it alone, I wouldn't have to lower myself to ask for your help. The lovely and moving person suddenly became delicate and pitiful. Her bright and beautiful smile became worried in the blink of an eye. Isn't Yi Lingfeng known as the capital's most affectionate man? Why can't I move his heart after doing so much? Seeing that we can enter the imperial capital tomorrow, I'm afraid that once we enter the city, he will turn his back on me and abandon me in the blink of an eye. Chu Qingyan thought about their interactions along the way. It was indeed Du Guqing who took the initiative and Yi Lingfeng who accepted passively. Yi Lingfeng's acceptance was probably due to his gentlemanly demeanor. However, Yi Lingfeng remained indifferent towards such a great beauty throwing herself at him. This made Chu Qingyan have a whole new level of respect for him. However, Chu Qingyan didn't understand Yi Lingfeng. He believed that he was very principled. He pursued women who moved his heart, but once he got his hands on them, after coaxing them, he would easily lose interest and move on to the next target. However, because he adhered to the principle of parting on good terms, those women who received his gold, silver, and jewelry were more reluctant to part with him than pestering endlessly like Du Guqing. Do you want to change to another person? This kind of man might not be a good match? As a bystander, Chu Qingyan really felt that she was too tired. If she wanted to move an affectionate but heartless person, it would be impossible unless there was a red rain under the heavens. Because heartless people have no heart. Little Qingyan, do you think that liking someone is very simple? It's like buying things in a shop. If this one doesn't work, then change to another one? Du Guqing slowly withdrew the smile on her lips. With a serious expression, she looked at Chu Qingyan's seemingly pitiful gaze. She slightly turned her head and missed that line of sight. She looked blankly at the dim clouds in the sky. This is the first time I've left home. The world is so big, I want to go out and see. If I stay in a corner, I will become a frog at the bottom of the well. Her voice paused. But I didn't expect to meet a man who is different from the ones I've been in contact with before. He is flirtatious but not vulgar. He is happy but not lustful. Poetry, music, chess, calligraphy, painting, astronomy, geography, eating, drinking, gambling, there is nothing he doesn't know. This kind of man, when he smiles, he is the dazzling star in the night sky. But when he smiles, he doesn't smile. Her eyes slowly regained their vigor. She looked at Chu Qingyan, who was deep in thought because of her words. Although I know that he might not be a good match, I still want to try. Although it is silly to be a moth to a flame, but what if it can melt a cold heart? I don't have any good points, but I won't turn back until I hit the south wall. The smile on her lips slowly widened, but her voice was a little soft. In the past 15 years, I have never been willful. I want to see how far I can go if I am willful this time. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but think of a sentence. In a person's life, there should be a journey that one can take as they wish, and a love that is willing to sacrifice oneself. And Du Guqing's words just so happened to perfectly explain this sentence. Okay, I'll give it a try. Whether I can succeed or not depends on my luck. Chu Qingyan looked at her calmly. It's not bad to play the emotional card, thank you, little Qingyan. A smile of success appeared on that bright face. Chu Qingyan's face darkened. It turned out that she had been tricked by her just now. By the way, little Qingyan, why are you going to Jiang country? Seeing little Qingyan's face change because of her words, Du Guqing immediately changed the topic, wanting to gloss over it. However, Chu Qingyan didn't really want to bicker with her. After thinking about it, she felt that there was nothing to hide. We want to go to the imperial capital to look for the ice crystal flower. Ice crystal flower? Although the name is not bad, I have never heard of it. Du Guqing shook her head. But why are you looking for the ice crystal flower? Chu Qingyan thought to herself. If you have heard of it, then it's not difficult. This ice crystal flower has probably been extinct for decades. The ice crystal flower is a kind of medicinal herb. We need it to refine medicine. Other than the ice crystal flower, we also need the love grass. The ice crystal flower is still okay, at least we have some clues. This love grass is really hard to find. Speaking until here, Chu Qingyan sighed. This was also the reason why she was in such a bad mood. And it's okay. As long as you work a little harder, You will find it. Where there's a will, there's a way. Just like how I relentlessly pursued Yi Lingfeng. Du Guqing rubbed her eyes that were about to close and cheered her on. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but find it funny when she heard that. Her mood also relaxed a lot. However, not long after, Chu Qingyan recalled the conversation in the courtyard. That figure with light footsteps, who kept rubbing his eyes and yawning as he left, often appeared in front of her eyes. It turned out that she didn't lie to her. What she said was all true. However, when the person who hit the wall and turned around, there was no spirit in his smile. Tragedy was to destroy all the beautiful things in front of others. When Chu Qingyan drew her sword again and calmly prepared to perform another set of swordsmanship, she didn't hear the muttering of the person who kept yawning as he left. Lovegrass, what a familiar name. Oh, I'm so sleepy. I'm going to catch up on my sleep. Chapter 401. The weather was getting colder. This was Chu Qingyan's first winter in ancient times, but it was colder than any winter she had experienced before. It might snow in a few days, Qingyan Luo murmured as she looked into the distance. Snow! Chu Qingyan caught on to these two words, and her interest was piqued. I have never seen snow in my entire life. Qingyan Luo heard her energetic voice and pursed her lips into a smile. You little girl, you're already wrapped up like a bear. When it snows, you won't even want to go out. Besides, it'll be even colder when the snow melts. Can your little body withstand it? Chu Qingyan almost exploded when she heard her teasing. I'm not that weak. Recently, I've been practicing martial arts and my body's ability to withstand the cold has improved a lot. This little wind and cold isn't a problem for me at all. Then you, Qingyan Luo deliberately stopped talking and looked her up and down. Chu Qingyan could clearly feel her malicious gaze. She lowered her head and looked at the 3 layers of clothes she was wearing. She was filled with grief and anger. She didn't stay any longer and turned to walk towards the culprit. I don't need to wear so much. I'm not afraid of the cold. She tugged at his sleeve and said with a sad face. Actually, even without Yenlua's reminder, she almost couldn't recognize herself when she saw the round person in the mirror. She really did look like a mini bear, and a chubby one at that. Is that so? The clear voice raised the last syllable with a hint of suspicion. She stiffened her neck and replied stubbornly. She thought that he would ignore her, but unexpectedly, when she raised her head to peek at him, a pair of ink-black eyes enlarged in front of her. Little girl, do you know why you don't feel cold? Why? Chu Qingyan stammered as she replied. The reason why people feel cold is because they wear too little clothes. The reason why you don't feel cold is because you wear enough clothes to withstand the cold. If you don't want to catch a cold again, then wear them obediently. Xiao Su's gaze swept across her somewhat dull eyes. He raised his hand and patted her head. Then, he straightened up and walked to a chair at the side to sit down. When Chu Qingyan came back to her senses, before she could respond, she heard a stifled laugh. Chu Qingyan turned around and glared at Qingyan Luo, who was shaking with laughter. She only looked away when she saw that Qingyan Luo had left. However, when Chu Qingyan turned to look at the person in front of her, her mind was no longer on the question of whether to wear more or less clothes. Her eyes were fixed on him. Perhaps no one knew that the man who was so busy every day, who only cared about the people, the court, and the royal family, would one day be discussing the issue of winter clothes with a girl in an unfamiliar and inconspicuous place. It was a world of difference. No one would believe him if he said it out loud. But it was happening right in front of him. And no one except her would see such a domestic conversation. Chu Qingyan tilted her head and sized up the person in front of her. His eyes were calm, without the sharp and cold look he had when they first met more than half a year ago. It was as if his sharpness had been ground away by the tribulations again and again. Washed away like this, it was as if only a calm and leisurely air was left. But she knew that such a person, regardless of whether he had walked from the clouds to the quagmire, could not hide his luxuriousness. For some people, it was their looks that made people unable to forget them. For some people, it was their talent that made people unable to forget them. However, in this world, there was a kind of person who could ignore his looks and inner qualities. With just a glance, he would be unforgettable for no reason. This kind of person could only be encountered by chance. But such a person was right in front of her eyes. Pa! A drop of cold water fell on her face, waking her up with a start. Big Ice Cube, what are you doing? She wiped the water droplets off her face and said gloomily. He retracted his finger and said with amusement, I'm trying to wake you up. Don't be in a daze again. Chu Qingyan snorted and sat down beside him. Sister Yenluo took your pulse just now and said that the snake kiss poison has entered a dormant period. You shouldn't wake up before the time limit is up. But she said that you must not use your internal energy and must not have too many emotional fluctuations. Otherwise, you might not be able to suppress the poison. When it came to serious matters, she did not seem like an ignorant 10-year-old girl. She looked serious and serious, like an adult. Qingyan. Xiao Su did not respond to her. Instead, he called out softly. His tone seemed to be mixed with a trace of helplessness, amusement, and affection. What's wrong? She wanted to say something, but he interrupted her. It was as if her long curly hair was stuck. She could only raise her head and ask. He suddenly stretched out his hand and gently touched her eyebrows with his plump index finger. It was no longer as cold as before. Instead, it was warm with the fragrance of ink as he stroked her eyebrows. Child, don't become an old woman in advance. She had said these words more than 7 or 8 times, but each time, it seemed as if it was the first time she had been so serious and cautious. He saw the deep creases between her eyebrows and couldn't help but want to smooth them out. He wanted her to live a carefree and happy life, not a life of worry and fear. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it in the end. Chu Qingyan slapped his hand away and said angrily, You're complaining that I'm long-winded. Spit out. The word, spit out, meant annoyance. He knew that she always had these wonderful words in her words. Qingyan, let nature take its course. I'll fight for what I have to fight for. You don't have to put pressure on yourself. His eyes were bright and his smile was shallow. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see the smile lines at the corners of his eyes. You just have to be responsible for growing up healthily. Her angry cheeks immediately disappeared. She pursed her lips, but she didn't want to continue this topic. She felt that there was no end to this topic unless the ice crystal flower and the love grass were in front of her right now. I understand. Knowing that she didn't want to talk about this topic, Xiao Su was silent. Chu Qingyan scratched her head. Looking at the person who was suddenly covered with coldness, she suddenly thought of something to divert the big ice cube's attention. This morning, I met Dugu Qing in the courtyard. She asked me to give you some wind. What wind? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows, seeming to have guessed something. Of course it's about your romantic and elegant good friend. Chu Qingyan put her elbows on the table and her hands on her cheeks. She seemed to be in high spirits. Big Ice Cube, can you tell Yi Lingfeng to settle down? He's not young anymore. It's time to settle down. Don't think about those girls all day. If you let down a girl's good intentions, you'll be struck by lightning. You can also do a good deed. Let the world have one less heartless man and one more lover. Chu Qingyan used all her glib tongue, but the person in front of her didn't seem to be moved at all. I never meddle in other people's affairs. Xiao Su made her speechless. It seemed that she couldn't do what Dugu Qing asked her to do. But she was a little depressed. Then why do you keep meddling in my affairs? His cold eyes swept over. Are you someone else? Chu Qingyan shook her head in disappointment. No, I'm not. Good girl. Chapter 402. When it rains, it pours. Just as everyone was packing their luggage and preparing to head to the capital, the weather was not on their side and it began to rain heavily. The winter rain was bone-piercing cold. Chu Qingyan hugged the hand warmer and looked at the endless winter rain outside the window. She felt helpless. Miss Chu, come and sit. Don't stand at the door, the wind is strong. Yi Lingfeng ordered the servants to prepare hot tea and pastries. He felt like he was going to fight this rain to the death. She slowly walked over and sat beside Xiao Su. Her voice was filled with worry. I don't know how long this rain will last. Let's not delay. If the rain doesn't stop in 2 hours, we should still set off. Anyway, This place is not far from the capital. We should be able to arrive in the evening. With that, Yi Lingfeng ordered the servants to head to the capital to make arrangements. That's good too. Chu Qingyan nodded, but she accidentally glanced at Dugu Qing, who was holding her cheeks with both hands. She couldn't help but shake her head with a smile. Clearly, Yi Lingfeng also noticed Dugu Qing's gaze. His body stiffened before returning to normal. He chatted cheerfully with Xiao Su beside him. For some people, the more you respond to them, the more they jump. If you ignore them, they will stop thinking about you. However, Yi Lingfeng didn't understand Dugu Qing. She was the kind of person who became braver the more she was defeated. The sound of the rain covered the voices of the young people in the room. If it wasn't for the anxiety in her heart, Chu Qingyan would feel that this kind of place, this kind of environment, actually gave people a feeling of peace and comfort. Little Feng, is your waist better? After Mr. Chu finished the pastries and tea, he turned to look at Yi Lingfeng, who was standing not too far away. Everyone couldn't help laughing because of Father Chu calling him Little Feng. They didn't know why, but after seeing Yi Lingfeng, Father Chu shifted the attention of White Impermanence, Black Impermanence, Hollow, Little Yama, and Blockhead to him. Hua Ling and the others almost lit up fireworks to celebrate because of this. They were no longer fun in Father Chu's eyes. When Yi Lingfeng heard these three words, his eyes twitched. This Little Feng sounded no different from a little lunatic. He had no enmity with Father Chu, and he didn't think that his charm was enough to attract Father Chu's attention. Why did he keep pestering him along the way? It's almost healed. Yi Lingfeng gritted his teeth. Thanks to Father Chu's reminder, he remembered the humiliation of being kicked away a few days ago. What a painful realization. I don't think you're fully healed yet. Look at you, you're talking like a pregnant woman holding her waist. So, when we depart, let Dugu take care of you. Look, you didn't bring any maidservants to take care of you, and the courtyard is filled with manservants. They aren't as attentive as the maidservants. Father Chu rambled on. Yi Lingfeng felt as if a few crows were croaking above his head. He looked at Dugu Qing's rosy cheeks and immediately wanted to refuse. Chu Machen's father turned to Xiao Su and said, "Son-in-law, don't you agree with me?" Xiao Su faintly nodded. Yi Lingfeng's eyes widened. He was betrayed by his brother just like that? Thus, Father Chu beamed at Yi Lingfeng and said, "Son-in-law also agrees. Little Feng, you have to thank Little Qing. She spared no effort to take care of you." Yi Lingfeng's smile stiffened on his face. He looked at Dugu Qing, who was smiling at him beautifully, and the corners of his eyes twitched again. Although this Father Chu was silly, the things he did were always inconceivable. He didn't forget that Hua Ling had described the ridiculous things that Father Chu had done along the way. However, this was only limited to outsiders. Those who were teased by him suffered unspeakably, like Ethereal and Qing Yanluo. Thus, Yi Lingfeng could only swallow his anger. He didn't want to provoke such a troublesome character. If he really caught him off guard, his reputation would really be ruined. Thus, Yi Lingfeng tacitly agreed to Father Chu's suggestion. Chu Qingyan, who had witnessed all of this, didn't know what her father was up to. However, she could vaguely guess that her father was addicted to moonlighting and had already turned his target to Yi Lingfeng and Dugu Qing. However, Chu Qingyan also guessed that Dugu Qing might have taken the initiative to ask her father for help. Because Dugu Qing's mouth was sweet and often made Father and Mother Chu happy, Father Chu and Dugu Qing had established a deep revolutionary friendship along the way. Look, Dugu Qing even gave her father a thumbs up. Chu Qingyan could only smile and shake her head. However, she sincerely hoped that her father could help. After these few days of observation, if Yi Lingfeng could be more serious, he would be quite compatible with Dugu Qing. However, Yi Lingfeng didn't want to give up just like that. He originally didn't want to reveal his trump card, but Xiao Su's nod just now was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Yi Lingfeng's lips curled into a sinister smile. Do you know that because of the assassination in the palace, the entire city is under martial law? From today onwards, you can only enter the imperial capital with a travel pass from your country. At this point, Yi Lingfeng deliberately paused and looked at Xiao Su. Brother Xiao, I remember that your travel pass was provided by Junzi Sheng, right? The travel pass from other countries has to be stamped at the relay station to confirm your identity. However, if you want to go to the relay station to verify your identity, it might be a waste of time. Thus, I found someone last night to get a new travel pass, so you don't need to go to the relay station anymore. Chu Qingyan nodded. She felt that Yi Lingfeng was very thorough in his work and wasn't as unreliable as he appeared to be. Many thanks for young Master Yi's help. Chu Qingyan smiled and thanked him. Xiao Su's hand that was holding the cup paused, and he looked at Yi Lingfeng suspiciously. Every time he smiled so slyly, it meant that the matter wasn't so simple. You're welcome. This is what this one should do. However, Yi Lingfeng looked at Xiao Su with some vexation. This travel pass. Yi Lingfeng's hesitation succeeded in whetting everyone's appetite. Is there a problem with this travel pass? Chu Qingyan put away the joy in her heart and asked with a puzzled expression. Yi Lingfeng snickered inside but didn't show it on his face. His expression was troubled, because the imperial decree has just been issued and we are in a hurry to leave. It really isn't easy to match your identity. If you have something to say, say it. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes and said. Yi Lingfeng glanced at him. I'll let you be smug for a while. Let's see if you can still be awe-inspiring later. AI, in your group, there are children, adults, elders, and guards. I only have one travel pass that matches your identity. At this point, Yi Lingfeng purposely kept them in suspense. Everyone held their breaths and listened. Then he slowly said, that is a young miss from a merchant family bringing her parents and child husband to the imperial capital to play. It sounded quite normal. Wait, child husband? What the hell was that? Chapter 403. Just like that, 2 hours passed and the rain gradually became lighter. Finally, the sun pierced through the clouds and poured its light onto the earth, but the weather was still cold. Everyone had already gotten into the carriage and were preparing to head towards the Jiang country's capital. According to the plan, they would arrive at the capital in the afternoon. Everyone should have been excited, but on the way, everyone was in a state where they wanted to laugh, but didn't dare to laugh. Child husband? Their wise and powerful master had suddenly become the little princess consort's child husband? Ha ha ha, they were secretly laughing in their hearts. They were suffocating to death. The fire spirit, wood spirit, and the others were communicating with their eyes. Young Master Yi's move was too ruthless. Inside the carriage filled with cold air, Chu Qingyan held the travel permit in her hand. She really wanted to laugh, but because of the dark-faced person next to her, she could only hold back her laughter and did not dare to laugh out loud. It had to be said that Yi Lingfeng had stepped on Big Ice Block's reverse scale. Big Ice Block, don't bring disaster to the fish in the moat, this has nothing to do with me. Chu Qingyan raised her hands and innocently said to Xiao Su. No matter how much the Big Ice Block spoiled her, he still had a male chauvinist mentality. How could he accept this kind of title? Child husband? That was someone who was raised at home from a young age to be the husband of his daughter. Xiao Su's expression was not happy. This Yi Lingfeng had injured his head and not his waist. He actually dared to play this trick on him. Big Ice Block calmed down. As the saying goes, a real man does not care about trifles. Don't take it to heart. Chu Qingyan could feel the ice-cold aura around him that could freeze people to death. She rolled her eyes and tried to persuade him. It was a pity that Xiao Su did not buy it. He closed his eyes and leaned against the couch, resting his mind. It was good to not care about trifles, but it was a big mistake to lose integrity. Although the little fellow had nothing to do with this matter, he still felt uncomfortable, so he simply did not want to see her. Chu Qingyan didn't know what he was thinking. Looking at his cold face, she scratched her head and suddenly blamed Yi Lingfeng. It turned out that this person came to drive a wedge between her and the ice cube. That's enough. Next time, don't let her catch him. Be careful that she won't let him off easily. Although she was angry, Chu Qingyan still knew what was important. The most important thing now was to comfort Big Ice Cube's hurt heart. A wounded heart? If Xiao Su knew about this, he would probably snort disdainfully. What a joke! Was such a small matter worth him getting hurt? Chu Qingyan kept the travel permit and leaned forward. She asked in a soft voice, Big Ice Cube, are you angry? No, Xiao Su replied casually without opening his eyes. His voice was hard, and it was obvious that he did not mean what he said. Chu Qingyan scratched her head. What was the Big Ice Cube angry about? Was it because he felt that being a child husband was a disgrace to him, the Great Lord? She didn't think much about it. She reached out and hugged his arm, pressing her body against his. Big Ice Cube, it's just an identity. Don't take it to heart. At most, I'll be your child bride, okay? Once a person became anxious and wanted to comfort someone, they would often say something unexpected, something that even they had not thought of. For example, Chu Qingyan at this time. Chu Qingyan was stunned when she said this. What the hell did she say? However, this sentence didn't seem to move Xiao Su at all. Instead, it made him open his eyes. His clear and cold eyes were like a cold winter breeze, somewhat cold. Haven't you always been my child? Xiao Su replied matter-of-factly. Chu Qingyan frowned. Could it be that Big Ice Cube had always treated her as his child bride? Alright, don't think too much. Close your eyes and sleep. Xiao Su changed his position and reached out to pull the person in his arms into his embrace. He was just teasing her just now. He had never understood what kind of existence she was to him, but he had never thought of delving into it. Ever since that night of kneeling, he could only let nature take its course for many things. If she wanted to stay by his side, he would ensure that she was happy and healthy. If she wanted to leave, he would not force her to stay. He would protect her in the dark for the rest of her life. He never forced the people who were with him, nor did he treat them unfairly. The person beside her closed his eyes again, and his breathing gradually became long. Chu Qingyan listened to the strong heartbeat beside her ear, and she could not help but smile. Whether it was a child husband or a child bride, it was fine as long as she and Big Ice Cube were safe and sound. The person beside her gave her a feeling of peace that she had not experienced in the past 20 years. Just like now, she could let down her guard and sleep in his arms without worry. What kind of feeling was this? Sometimes she would think. It was not like friendship, but more like family. What else? What else? She did not think about it anymore. Because she had no direction to think about. It was not Chu Qingyan's fault. In the 20 years of her life in the modern world, she was a scholarly generation with a strict upbringing. When she was supposed to have her first awakening of love in middle school, the elders in her family had held a late-night discussion with the main point that she was not allowed to fall in love early. In high school, her parents had high expectations, so she focused on her studies. When she went to university, she was surrounded by many outstanding men. But since middle school, she had always remembered the teachings of the adults and never touched that aspect. This caused her to form a habit and naturally avoided any kind of relationship with men. So even in ancient times, when she became dependent on Xiao Su and had other feelings, she did not know about it, because she had never thought about it that way. However, liking someone was an instinct. Sooner or later, the clouds would be parted and the sun would shine. It was just a matter of time. When Chu Qingyan woke up from her sleep, she happened to arrive at the imperial capital's gate. It was noisy and noisy. 2 rows of guards armed with spears were facing each other, forming a passage. Everyone who wanted to enter or leave the city gate had to go through the guards' inspection. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Everyone got off the car to be inspected. This was not the first time they were inspected, so everyone was very calm. Chu Qingyan was now representing the head of the family. She led everyone to the table. Behind the table sat a guard wearing a blue official's uniform. He did not even raise his eyes as he said, "Guide." Chu Qingyan handed it over. The guard flipped it open as usual. However, when he saw the information inside, he immediately raised his head and glanced at Chu Qingyan before looking behind her. His eyes were filled with mockery as he said, "Identify each of you one by one. Once you confirm that there is no mistake, I will let you pass." Chu Qingyan felt that this guard was deliberately making things difficult for her. However, a strong dragon could not suppress a snake in its territory. She could only follow his orders. "This is my father, my mother, my family's maidservant, my family's servant, my family's child husband dash." Chu Qingyan pointed out the order in which they stood. Chu Qingyan did not miss that when she pointed at the big ice block and said the 3 words child husband, the onlookers roared with laughter. She frowned. The guard looked at Xiao Su, who was not good-looking, and the ridicule at the corner of his mouth deepened. You are this young lady's child husband dash? Look at your physique. Of all things, you can be someone's child husband. Isn't this the behavior of a coward? As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan felt her entire body turn cold. It's over. The big ice block was angry. Chapter 404. That square-faced guard did not feel the sudden drop in temperature. He looked at his subordinate beside him and looked at Xiao Su with disdain. He said in a voice full of disdain, "You have hands and feet, you can casually go out and make a living, but you're willing to stay under another girl and be a gigolo. You're simply a disgrace to the men of our Jiang country." The Jiang country's territory was personally established by the Jiang country's emperor. His deeds had affected many generations of people, to the point that the men of Jiang country all saw him as their role model. They worked hard to improve themselves and were unwilling to lower their heads. They felt that men should be ambitious and at the very least, they should be indomitable and create their own world. So when they saw that a man of Jiang country was willing to be a child husband for someone else, it was simply a great humiliation. When that square-faced guard saw the information on the travel permit, his heart was filled with disdain. With every word that square-faced guard said, Chu Qingyan and the others felt the temperature around them drop. The mocking gazes and laughter all fell onto Xiao Su. Hua Ling and the others had already reached their hands to their waists. As long as their master gave the order, they would not hesitate to kill to protect their master's dignity. What a joke! How could their master be a gigolo? When their master was killing enemies on the battlefield, these people were probably still wearing diapers and playing with mud. They actually dared to laugh at their most wise and powerful master. They were simply tired of living. As for Yi Lingfeng, he was filled with regret at this moment. If he had not changed the travel permit to Jiang country's identity for a moment of pleasure, Xiao Su would not have suffered this humiliation. He looked at his good friend whose face was so dark that it could sink into the ground. He knew that he could not cause a commotion right now, otherwise all their efforts would go down the drain. Just as that square-faced guard wanted to say something, Chu Qingyan raised her head and cut him off with a smile. This officer, this is my family's child husband. When my family was in trouble, he reached out to save us. When he was wrongly accused, he never bent his back. He is indomitable and unyielding. In this girl's eyes, he is not someone who only knows how to eat. It is because of him that my family's business can flourish. He is not a gigolo, he is my family's man. Officer, please don't misunderstand. Chu Qingyan's words were spoken gently and without a hint of anger. It was precisely because of this that the square-faced guard listened to her. The mockery on the square-faced guard's face faded a lot. However, how could he take back what he had said? He turned to face Xiao Su, who was as dark as water. A child husband is still a child husband. It's too unpleasant to hear. You'd better take care of yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, the square-faced guard met with Xiao Su's cold eyes. After experiencing the tempering of drinking blood on the battlefield, how could those eyes of his have the sharpness and killing intent that ordinary people could have? That square-faced guard was so frightened by this glance that he retreated a few steps. He only managed to stabilize his body with the support of his subordinates. When he looked at Xiao Su again, he had already shifted his gaze to the little girl. At this moment, the citizens who were stranded behind and wanted to enter the city started to shout impatiently. Only then did the square-faced guard stop pestering them and wave his hand impatiently to let them pass. Although Chu Qingyan did not like this snobbish guard, she had no choice but to lower her head in Jiang country. She took the travel pass and led everyone into the city. After the guard's line of sight, Yi Lingfeng immediately walked up, looking like a little wife. "Brother Xiao, it's my fault. Are you all right?" After saying that, he looked at Xiao Su cautiously. At this moment, Xiao Su's lips were curled into a smile, but his eyes were icy cold. His gaze swept past Yi Lingfeng. Yi Lingfeng shuddered, feeling as if that gaze was cutting him into pieces. "Yi Lingfeng, you're very good." His voice rose. It was a faint smile, so deep that it made people tremble. Yi Lingfeng's shoulders drooped. It was over. He had stepped on his bottom line. After saying that, Xiao Su nimbly got into the carriage and ignored him. Chu Qingyan shook her head. Just as she was about to get into the carriage, Yi Lingfeng pulled her sleeve. She turned her head and saw Yi Lingfeng looking at her with a mournful expression. "Miss Chu, help me put in a good word. Don't make him angry. Otherwise, I will be very miserable." "Young Master Yi, you have to finish the path you chose even if you have to kneel down. You planted the seeds, and you have to bear the consequences even if you cry. I really can't do anything." Speaking of which, she really wanted to beat Yi Lingfeng up. But he was Big Ice Cube's old friend, so it was not good for her to do it. In any case, he had to pay for what he did. After saying that, Chu Qingyan got into the carriage with a leap, leaving Yi Lingfeng's face carefree. He had left in a state of withering and never coming back. This time, he had gone too far. "Big brother Lingfeng, don't worry. If you're afraid of revenge, we'll leave first. Moreover, they also need you now. They won't make a move on you so quickly. Don't worry." Du Guqing walked up and comforted him. Yi Lingfeng turned his head. It was like he had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. "Are you serious?" "Of course it's real. It's more real than a pearl," Du Guqing said seriously. Yi Lingfeng immediately relaxed. This was the first time he felt that Du Guqing was pleasing to the eye. Hearing the conversation outside the carriage, Chu Qingyan raised her brows. Offending Big Ice Cube, he wouldn't let him off so easily. She turned to look at the person beside her. At this time, Xiao Su no longer had the evil aura he had before. "Big Ice Cube, you don't have to care about what others say. Our identities are just a disguise." She knew that men placed great importance on their face. And the higher the status, the more important it was. Big Ice Cube had a high status in Sichuan Kingdom. Even if those people were scheming against him, no one could embarrass him in public. So she could only do her best to comfort him. "I know," Xiao Su calmly replied. Chu Qingyan nodded. Big Ice Cube was a very generous person. He wouldn't care about these small things. But she had underestimated a man's sense of righteousness. "Hualing," Xiao Su spoke. "This subordinate is here." Hualing immediately appeared by the window. "Spread the news of Yi Lingfeng's return," Xiao Su calmly said. Hearing this, Hualing revealed an excited expression. Yi Lingfeng had stayed in the imperial capital for so many years and had provoked many women. Although Yi Lingfeng had cleanly gotten rid of them, it didn't mean that these women thought the same way. One could imagine how many women would move once the news of him spread out. It really made people look forward to it. Also, you should know how to deal with that guard. Xiao Su continued. "This subordinate understands." Hualing clenched his fists. He already couldn't take it anymore. Chu Qingyan sat on the side and watched her Big Ice Cube calmly give orders. He had dealt with two people without batting an eyelid. Fierce enough. "Yi Lingfeng, good luck to you." Chu Qingyan could already foresee what kind of disaster he was going to face when he returned this time. He could offend anyone, but offending her Big Ice Cube was the same as digging his own grave. Chapter 405. The capital of Jiang Kingdom was as bustling and lively as she had imagined. The bustling crowd, the busy streets, and the row upon row of shops. The sun was about to set, and the dim yellow sunlight stretched the wine flags and signboards diagonally. Even the cold wind that blew carried the fragrance of the 5 grains. This was a country that was not inferior to Sichuan and Junlan. However, in Chu Qingyan's eyes, Jiang Kingdom was more peaceful than Sichuan and more stable than Junlan. This was because she could tell the current situation of this country from the expressions of the people. Chu Qingyan leaned against the window as the carriage moved forward slowly. The shops in front of her flashed past one by one. There were tea houses, restaurants, pawn shops, snack shops, and pastry shops. She looked at them one by one and did not pay much attention to those shops. She just wanted to remember this feeling. After dusk, the world was peaceful, and it made people unknowingly relax. Chu Qingyan decided to include Jiang Kingdom's capital as one of her must-visit tourist attractions. A thought flashed through her mind, and she couldn't help but turn her head. With a relaxed expression, she asked the person who was resting with his eyes closed, "Big Ice Cube, do you like a life of war or a life as plain as water?" She asked this question because she was influenced by the gatekeeper. That was why she was curious. Big Ice Cube had been leading troops for so many years in a difficult environment, but he was also free and unfettered. Hot-blooded men were not willing to be ordinary. She wanted to know, if he did not walk in a life of war in the future, would he be able to adapt to that plain and uneventful life? Hearing her question, Xiao Su slowly opened his eyes. His dark mirror-like eyes sparkled slightly, and they were even more beautiful than the gradually darkening sky. The light was not concentrated in his dark eyes, and it could be seen that he had fallen into deep thought because of Chu Qingyan's words. War of war? Plain as water? His thin lips parted slightly and his voice was faint, but it was not as cold as before. He frowned slightly, and the light in his eyes gathered slightly. He looked at the person who was leaning against the window and looking at him with her chin resting on her hand. "What kind of life do you want to live?" Chu Qingyan chuckled. Big Ice Cube probably didn't know what kind of life he liked, so he threw the question to her. However, she still thought about it seriously because she had never considered this question before. "I want to live a peaceful life, I want to be happy, I want to be exciting, I want to be free, I want to do whatever I want to do. Although I don't know what I want to do now, I think that as long as I am willing, I will eventually find it. To stand up and walk, I need courage. To do what others don't dare to do, I need to be fearless. Perhaps my future choices will be different from others, but only by doing what I love can I achieve extraordinary results." Chu Qingyan thought as she spoke. She felt that her words were very messy. She said whatever came to her mind, but she knew that Big Ice Cube could understand her. "Very good." Xiao Su nodded. He didn't feel that there was anything wrong with what she said. The life she wanted sounded very simple and there were no big ambitions, but he felt that it was very good. The simplest happiness was sometimes more difficult to achieve than those monstrous riches. Peace, joy, freedom, and excitement, there should be very few people in this world who would dare to admit that his current life could be like this. However, if he had the chance, he was willing to create such a life for her. At this time, Xiao Su was betrayed by his family and abandoned by his closest relatives. He didn't have much hope for those people in the Sichuan imperial city. Now, there was probably no one else who could be considered the closest to him except for this little fellow who had no blood relations with him. Therefore, he gave her all his love and didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. It was because of this that the two of them were going around in circles until many years later. Every time they encountered the center of the vortex, they consciously avoided it. Only in the end, when their feelings intertwined and they couldn't control themselves, did they realize that they had fallen so deeply into the game. Only then did they realize that it wasn't overnight. This was something that happened many years later. Let's return to reality for now. Chu Qingyan was a little dissatisfied. She had said so much, but the big ice block only said 2 words, "Very good." He said that Yi Lingfeng was very good before, but then he turned around and had Hua Ling spread news of his whereabouts. Then what did he mean when he said very good to her? "Big ice block, do you like this kind of life?" She thought about it and couldn't help asking. Although she had always been with him, she still couldn't see through the person she was with day and night. She always felt like there was a veil separating them. He could see what she was thinking, but she didn't feel anything for him. Sometimes she wondered if it was because their experiences were different, the things they experienced were different, and the people they grew up with were also different. He was patient and good at hiding his emotions. As for her, no matter how much she tried to hide her emotions, it would always be revealed. However, she also felt that her skills couldn't compare to the big ice block. He was a great general who had led 3 armies and fought against enemies. She knew she couldn't compare to him, but she unknowingly felt a strange desire for the big ice block. She didn't want him to hide anything from her. As she thought of this, Chu Qingyan was shocked by her own sudden thought. Was she possessed? Otherwise, why would she let her imagination run wild? Xiao Su did not notice a certain person's frown. He brushed the clothes on his knees and his face was calm, When we finish our trip to Jiang country, I'll experience what kind of life you want with you. Because he also didn't know what kind of life he wanted to live. In the past, his path had been arranged, and he had been forced to walk it on his own initiative. This was the first time someone had asked him what kind of life he wanted to live. This was also the first time he had seriously thought about it. So he could still choose the path he wanted to walk. This kind of feeling was somewhat unfamiliar, but there was an indescribable curiosity and joy in his heart. Chu Qingyan, who was still immersed in her vexed mood, heard him say this, and a smile spread between her brows. She nodded heavily. Okay. The carriage had already slowly driven into the residence. All the warm sunlight was shut outside the door. The sky suddenly turned dark. The lanterns were lit and the night of the imperial capital slowly began. After entering the residence, everyone was tired from running around. They didn't have the mood to appreciate the magnificent and beautiful scenery of the residence and went to rest early under Lingfeng's arrangement. However, there were a few people who took advantage of the darkness to climb out of the residence. One person ran through the streets, one ran to the restaurants, and one ran to the tea house. Hey, have you heard? Family's young master went out and returned to the residence. I saw family's young master ride a carriage back to the residence today. That spirited and handsome appearance is still the same as before. Family's young master is back. Such words were said by one person and passed by another. Soon everyone knew. Hua Ling and the rest had a carefree smile as they turned around and returned to the residence. Everything was carried out silently. Chapter 406. What? Fenglang is back? A woman with white lips and teeth stopped drawing her eyebrows. Her eyes shone with a green light, as if she was a starving wolf that had seen a piece of fat meat. You mean he's in the capital? Elsewhere, a beautiful woman in delicate clothes immediately pressed down the embroidered handkerchief in her hand, her eyes filled with shyness. Fenglang is back. Quickly go and find out when he left. I want to have an unforgettable encounter with him. A woman with seductive eyes immediately ordered her personal maidservant. If you think there are only 3 of them, then you're underestimating Lingfeng's influence in the capital's women's circle. In any case, a large group of fat and thin women were rushing towards Lingfeng. Unfortunately, he was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the impending disaster. After a sleepless night, they slept well until dawn. Everyone gathered in the residence's guest hall, enjoying the rare opportunity to not be on the move. The family's elders were not in the residence. From what Lingfeng said to Chu Qingyan, the 2 elders of the family, Lingfeng's parents, had gone out to play at the beginning of the year and had yet to return. Presumably, they would only appear in the residence on New Year's Eve. Lingfeng had long gotten used to his irresponsible parents. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been in such a hurry to raise him and hand over the family's business to him before patting his clothes and leaving the residence. Chu Qingyan felt that only such playful parents could raise such an unrestrained son. However, without the elders in the residence, they could avoid unnecessary greetings and it made it easier for them to move around. After breakfast, at Lingfeng's suggestion, everyone headed for the capital's bazaar. Because Mu Ling had a blueprint in her hands, she didn't finish it in time, so she stayed in the residence alone. Chu Mu's mother also stayed in the residence because she was tired from running around for days. Cheng Yanluo said she wanted to study herbs, so she stayed. Ethereal did the same. Thus, the group of people, Chu Qingyan, Xiao Su, Lingfeng, Du Guqing, and Chu Mu's father, left the residence. Mistress, look, is that a steamed bun? Once out of the residence, Xining was like a bird that had been released from its shackles. She looked here and there, full of curiosity about everything in Zhang's capital. Chu Qingyan really wanted to cover the incessant chattering mouth. She felt as though she was bringing Granny Lu into the Grand View Garden. However, when she looked in the direction Xining's pointing, she couldn't help but be surprised. A steamed bun of all people? It's adorned with sesame seeds, peanuts, ginger, chopped onions, and almonds. It's different from ordinary steamed buns. Look, that one, that's a rose bun steamed bun. That one, of it. Elder sister Dugu, why are you so familiar with this? She remembered that Dugu Qing wasn't from Jiang. Dugu Qing subconsciously looked at the person in blue robes. It was as if she had returned to the time when she met him on the streets of the capital. At that time, she was curiously standing in front of a pastry shop, sizing up the oddly shaped yet fragrant pastries. Then he appeared just like that. Yi Lingfeng felt a gaze on him. He knew who it was based on the direction. However, he didn't look at her. Instead, he turned to talk to Xiao Su about interesting things in the capital. Dugu Qing was already used to not getting a response. She smiled at Chu Qingyan and said, "Because I've been wandering around the capital for 2 months. I've walked through all the streets and tried all the delicacies here." Chu Qingyan nodded. So that's how it was. Just by looking at those simple steamed buns, they could create so many different designs. Chu Qingyan also wanted to go around the entire imperial capital to eat. Her foodie nature was exposed again. When Chu Qingyan asked, Dugu Qing explained again. She didn't have enough, so she simply became Chu Qingyan's tour guide. She was responsible for explaining the delicacies and scenery along the way. When the group came to an arch bridge, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but think of the stone bridge over the West Lake in the legend of the White Snake. Many scholars and beautiful women met on that bridge, got to know each other, and then developed into lovers. Chu Qingyan was just fantasizing. She didn't expect that this scene would really happen in front of her. Fengling, what a coincidence. Why are you here? Didn't you go on a long trip? A woman with white lips and teeth appeared on the arch bridge. She looked at Yi Lingfeng in surprise and immediately went up to greet him. When Yi Lingfeng saw the woman, he waved the folding fan in his hand. At this time, his allergies were cured, and his appearance was still handsome. Today, he was wearing a blue robe with a jade pendant hanging from his waist. His face was bright like the moon, and his peach blossom eyes were like flowers full of love. So it's Miss Ru. What a coincidence to meet you here. How have you been? A magnetic and pleasant voice sounded, and Miss Ru's face turned red. Her cheeks were dyed red, and it was very lovable. I haven't seen Fenglang for many days. I've missed you. I haven't gone out for a few days, so I'm a little bored. I wonder where young Master Yi is going today? This little girl can accompany you. Miss Ru said shyly. When Dugu Qing saw this scene, she coldly snorted, "In broad daylight, you have no shame." Chu Qingyan was closer to Dugu Qing, and when she heard this, she couldn't help but look at Dugu Qing. She saw that Dugu Qing was still rather calm, and she was surprised. If it were her, she would have already gone up to Yi Lingfeng. She couldn't tolerate the man she liked flirting with another woman. Before Yi Lingfeng could answer, a woman walked up the stone steps. She was gentle and graceful, charming and delicate. She was another beautiful woman. What a coincidence. Fengling, why are you here? When did you come back? When the woman saw Yi Lingfeng, she walked over shyly. Yi Lingfeng replied with a smile, "Miss Lin, I just came back not long ago. I didn't expect to see you here." Miss Lin covered her mouth with a brocade handkerchief and smiled. "Of course, you didn't expect that I would send someone to guard your mansion's entrance. As soon as they saw you come out, they rushed over." At this moment, Miss Ru and Miss Lin looked at each other. They could see the hostility in each other's eyes. But before they could spark, another 3 or 4 women appeared from the 2 ends of the arched bridge. They were chattering and wearing heavy makeup. Their target was very clear. They went straight for Yi Lingfeng. It was the same opening speech as if they were in cahoots. "Fengling, what a coincidence. You're here too." When Yi Lingfeng heard this, the corner of his eyes twitched. To him, a beauty in front of him was a visual pleasure. But if it was a large group of people, it wasn't a visual pleasure. It was a demonic pressure. Chapter 407. Thus, on the bridge, it was not a meeting between a scholar and a beauty, but a farce that made people not know whether to laugh or cry. "Where did you girls come from? Can't you see that I'm here first? You shrew, why are you squeezing me? Quickly move away. Good, you actually dare to step on me." Fenglang, Fenglang. The girls finally remembered their target and turned to look at Yi Lingfeng. Then Hua Jiayu coquettishly said, Quickly come and uphold justice for me." Then Yi Lingfeng was drowned by the girls. Chu Qingyan had the foresight to draw a clear line between herself and Yi Lingfeng the moment the third woman appeared so that she wouldn't be implicated. At this time, she was watching this farce with Big Ice Cube and her father. She suddenly remembered Big Ice Cube's order to Hualing. "Big Ice Cube, did you do this?" "I merely spread the news. How many people will act upon hearing the news is not within the scope of my concern." The corners of Xiao Su's mouth curled up slightly. His smile was as calm as autumn water, and he didn't have the slightest awareness of being the main culprit. And this is called the butterfly effect. Chu Qingyan watched more and more young girls rush up and clicked her tongue. With one hand, she pulled her father who was watching a good show, and the other hand, she pulled Big Ice Cube and was about to walk down the bridge. Although she admired the ancient people's ability to build bridges, which were much stronger than modern ones, she knew that the bridge also had a limit. With so many people, she felt a lingering fear just thinking about it. After getting off the bridge, when Chu Qingyan calmed her breathing, she unexpectedly saw Dugu Qing's figure. "Big Sister Dugu, you don't plan to save young Master Yi? Teach him a lesson, so he won't always be a womanizer and attract bees and butterflies." Dugu Qing rubbed her eyes as if she was tired. At this time, Yi Lingfeng appeared in front of everyone with his clothes disheveled. The girls behind him were still arguing, as if they did not notice that the male lead had escaped. Cough, cough, there was a small episode, please don't take offense. Yi Lingfeng coughed with an awkward expression. Just as he finished speaking, he met Dugu Qing's bright eyes and unnaturally looked away. He did not know why, but he did not dare to look at those pure eyes. "Tidy up your clothes." Xiao Su looked at his clothes that had almost been stripped off in disgust. Then he led Chu Qingyan to the other side. Only then did Yi Lingfeng realize that the buttons on his clothes had been unbuttoned and the jade pendant on his waist was nowhere to be found. His expression changed slightly. At this time, Dugu Qing passed by him and snorted coldly to express her dissatisfaction. If Dugu Qing had scolded him, he would have felt that it was normal. However, she only looked at him coldly as he was surrounded by a group of women. He found it inconceivable. He tidied up his clothes and caught up with the people in front of him. "Little Feng, do you know what it means to go too far?" Chu Machen's father, who had been busy buying and eating along the way, raised his head from the delicacies and looked at Yi Lingfeng with a rare serious look. "I do. Why do you ask?" Yi Lingfeng looked at Mr. Chu in confusion. Jin Xen, who was walking to the side with his sword, heard Yi Lingfeng's words and could not help but look sympathetic. Usually, when Chu Machen's father asked a serious question, it meant that he was going to criticize you. If you did not believe him, please listen. Chu Machen's father swallowed the last piece of 5-flowered mantou in his mouth and said meaningfully to Yi Lingfeng, "Little Feng, do you know what is the noisiest thing in the world?" Without waiting for Yi Lingfeng to answer, Chu Machen's father answered his own question. "The first is the cicadas in summer. The second is women. Of course, other than my Kai Kai and Dan Yang. In everyone's life, marrying a wife and having a daughter is enough. Haven't you heard that 3 women make a show? Going too far is as bad as falling short. You will suffer." If they were not outside, Chu Qingyan could not help but want to shout out to her father. "Father is wise and mighty, awesome." Chu Machen's father patted Yi Lingfeng's shoulder. He did not see his petrified expression and turned to his daughter with a cute smile. "Kai Kai, I want 5 copper coins. I also want to eat that glutinous rice." In an instant, the atmosphere changed. Chu Qingyan motioned for Xining to take out the money from her purse and give it to her father. Then she asked, "Father, I'll ask Xining to give you some money. You can buy whatever you want, okay?" Chu Machen's father immediately shook his head. "No, I only want 5 copper coins. I'll get it from you when I need it." "Isn't that troublesome?" Chu Qingyan did not understand. "No, that's not the case. That way, you'll know that Daddy has no money, so you won't forget Daddy. Whatever Daddy wants, you'll buy for Daddy." Chu Machen's father took the copper coins, grabbed Jin Xian and skipped towards the stall, saying that he wanted Jin Xian to protect him. Chu Qingyan rubbed her head. Although her father's words were a bit strange and sometimes incoherent, She had to admit that her father's words made sense if she analyzed them carefully. Sometimes, I don't think your father is stupid. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but turn to look at him when she heard his comment. His inky eyes reflected the dark green water under the bridge and sparkled with a mesmerizing light. His black robe made him look as clear as snow and proud as frost. Actually, I don't think my father is stupid either. It's just that he doesn't show it. Yen Luo didn't come out today because she wanted to study her father's condition and find a way to treat him as soon as possible. Chu Qingyan looked at the sun that had risen halfway in the sky and smiled slightly. No matter what kind of person her father was, he would be the person she wanted to be filial to for the rest of her life. As if sensing her emotions, Xiao Su's eyes softened and he raised his hand to cover her head. His voice was clear and gentle. "Don't worry, everything will be fine." Yiling Feng still hadn't recovered from Father Chu's words. When he suppressed those inexplicable thoughts in his heart, he looked up and met Duguqing's eyes again. As if she had seen through his thoughts, he turned his head away awkwardly and didn't look at her again. After Chu Yang's father returned, the group of people went to the nearest tea house. At the same time, it was also the tea house with the largest flow of people in the capital. As soon as they entered, the enthusiastic waiter came out to greet them. When he saw Yiling Feng, his eagerness deepened. "Young Master Yi, you're here for tea today. Would you like a private room or?" "No, we'll just sit downstairs." Yiling Feng was familiar with the place. Then, under the waiter's guidance, he sat down at a table by the window. "What would you like to drink?" Seeing that they were all young Master Yi's friends, the waiter enthusiastically introduced them. "We have all kinds of tea here. Longjing, biluakun, maojian, a pot of biluakun and a few plates of desserts." Yiling Feng waved his hand and dismissed him. Today, drinking tea was secondary. The most important thing was to gather information. Chapter 408. There were all kinds of people in the tea house, and it was a must-visit place. Before the waiter's tea was served, wonderful news had already flown in from all over. "Hey, have you heard? Some time ago, His Majesty invited a master from somewhere. Now, he's living in a Buddhist temple. Every 3 days, he has to go to the palace to recite sutras. Rumor has it that His Majesty wants to clear his mind and restrain his desires, but some people say that this master is there to catch demons." A bearded man dressed in gray took a bite of a large sesame seed cake and said mysteriously to the person sitting beside him. Before the person sitting next to the burly man could say anything, a scholarly person at another table exclaimed in surprise, "Monster? Brother, it's broad daylight, can you not scare people? People don't talk about strange things." The man tore off a piece of sesame seed cake and threw it into his mouth. His eyes were full of disdain for the scholar. "You rotten scholars who only know how to talk nonsense. I heard this news from those officials. Say, how many small countries did His Majesty trample over in the past? How could he suddenly believe in Buddhism? Thinking about it, it's a bit strange. Wow, Big Ice Cube, does Jiang country have so much freedom of speech? Aren't you worried that you'll be arrested in the name of the emperor for talking nonsense?" Chu Qingyan was surprised. Hearing Chu Qingyan's doubts, Yiling Feng smiled and said disapprovingly, "Jiang country has a free culture and freedom of speech. As long as you don't go overboard, no one will pay attention to you." "So open, that's good." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but praise. That scholar didn't say anything because of the man's murderous look. Presumably, he also felt that what the man said made sense. Someone heard the man and scholar's conversation and whispered, "Sister, I heard that the master is very young. He doesn't seem to be in his 20s yet. He has a dignified appearance. The last time I saw him on the street, I felt that it was a pity that such a man entered Buddhism." A woman's voice cut in, "I've seen the Buddhist monk you're talking about. Immaculately dressed, with a dignified appearance. If I were to use something to describe him, I can only think of the noble and proud Buddhist lotus." After saying that, the girls cupped their faces and became infatuated. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but widen her eyes as she listened to their descriptions. Not even 20 years old, but a Buddhist monk with a dignified appearance. Buddhist lotus? She formed an image in her mind. Su Jian. Impossible. Wasn't he in Sichuan? How could he appear here? Chu Qingyan immediately dispelled this guess. At this time, Yi Lingfeng opened his mouth. I've also heard of His Majesty inviting this master. At that time, I was just about to pick you up, so I didn't pay much attention to him. But to be honest, that big man's words are somewhat reasonable. His Majesty fought on the battlefield in his early years, and his hands were covered in blood. If he invited a monk to recite sutras, it's simply a rumor because this reason sounds too far-fetched. What's the reason? Is it really a ghost hunt? Dugu Qing asked curiously. Yi Lingfeng glanced at her. Do you believe in ghosts and gods in this world? Dugu Qing subconsciously shook her head. Then, she realized that he was despising her and couldn't help but glare at him. Chu Qingyan, who was at the side, heard Yi Lingfeng's question and remained silent. Actually, in the modern world, she also didn't believe in ghosts and gods in this world. But when she transmigrated, she began to suspect that there were some things that science couldn't answer. Has anything happened in the Jiang Kingdom's palace recently? Xiao Su suddenly asked. Yi Lingfeng carefully recalled, and gently patted the folding fan in his hand. Other than the assassination a few days ago, there shouldn't be anything else. The servants reported that the assassin hasn't been found yet. The imperial capital is still under martial law. But this incident happened after the monk was invited, so it shouldn't have anything to do with the monk. Lingfeng, think of a way to investigate the reason for the monk's invitation and who the assassin's target is. With his sharp senses as a politician, Xiao Su felt that these two incidents seemed unrelated, but his intuition told him that they were inextricably linked. Okay, I'll get someone to pay attention and see if they can find the problem. Yi Lingfeng nodded. After all, this was the imperial capital of the Jiang Kingdom. Unlike Sichuan and Junlan, there were no Xiao Su's men here. Moreover, they weren't familiar with the Jiang Kingdom. His men couldn't act rashly. If they touched the interests or taboos of those people, their hearts would be exposed. Think about it, the lord of another country appeared in their territory. What kind of unspeakable secret could there be? Even if there wasn't, they were all experts in strategy. Even if there wasn't, they would still come up with something, just in case. If their identities were exposed, it would be harmful to them. As soon as Yi Lingfeng finished speaking, the people at the table next to him began to whisper. By the way, did you see our crown prince and second prince at the sacrificial ceremony a few days ago? Guest A asked the person beside him. Yes, we saw them. The sacrificial ceremony is held once a year. Even if we have important things to do, we have to put it aside. That's an opportunity for us people to see the emperor, empress, and princes. If we miss it, we can only wait for the next year, Guest B said excitedly, as if he could make a fortune just by seeing them once. I saw it too. Our crown prince is still so peerless. It's really a blessing for the people of the Jiang Kingdom to have such a crown prince. Guest C stroked his beard and said with a flushed face. Yes, our emperor is really good at raising children. His Highness the Crown Prince is diligent in government affairs. His Highness the Second Prince is gentle and polite. They are brothers who are respectful to each other, unlike in other countries where brothers are at odds with each other. I'm really glad that we are under the leadership of His Majesty and not born in another country. Guest A sighed. When Chu Qingyan heard their discussion, she felt some admiration for the emperor of the Jiang Kingdom. He should be a wise king to be loved and respected by the people to this extent. Out of the corner of her eye, she inadvertently glanced at the person beside her. His face was as still as water, and there was a touch of sadness in his eyes that one could not detect if one did not look carefully. Chu Qingyan was stunned, then she understood. She lowered her eyes, and her heart was also a little heavy. People would feel indignant because there was a comparison. When the emperor of the Jiang Kingdom and the Sichuan emperor were compared, it was clear who was better and who was inferior at a glance. If the emperor of the Sichuan Kingdom was even slightly better than the emperor of the Jiang Kingdom, then Big Ice Cube would not have to wander in a foreign land? Unfortunately, everything was already set. The Sichuan emperor would not become the emperor of the Jiang Kingdom. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and covered his hand. When he turned to look at her, she said pitifully, "Big ice cube, I'm cold. Lend me some of your body heat." He could not help but shake his head when he heard that. She was wearing so much and she was still cold. As expected, her body was still weak. He did not answer. Instead, he turned his hand and put her hand into his. When that hand obediently clasped in his palm, his heart calmed down for no reason. Su Yi's vexing worries just now disappeared like smoke. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. She was not cold. She was just afraid that he would be cold and his heart would be cold. At this moment, a voice attracted Chu Qingyan's attention. Chapter 409. When everyone was praising the emperor of the Jiang kingdom and the two princes, a voice suddenly rang out. "By the way, have you seen the third princess?" a handsome young man asked. "The third princess?" Everyone was stunned by the question and then shook their heads. Customer C said to the young man, "The third princess hasn't participated in the ceremony from last year to this year's ceremony. This old man misses the third princess very much. She doesn't have the airs of a princess and treats people gently. I heard that last year, a child ran under her imperial chariot. She immediately ordered people to stop the carriage and carried the child out before continuing on. She said that it didn't matter if the auspicious hour was delayed. Back then, this old man was successfully convinced by the third princess. Our third princess really has a bodhisattva's heart. Yes, our third princess is so kind. It's a pity that she met a bad man." Customer D turned around and discussed with everyone. "Why do you say that the third princess met a bad man?" Chu Qingyan, who was listening to everyone's discussion, couldn't help but ask when they didn't get to the point after a long time. As soon as Chu Qingyan spoke, those people all turned to look at her. The hostility in their eyes was obvious, as if Chu Qingyan had asked a very wrong question. Chu Qingyan was a little innocent. She only asked a question and didn't do anything evil. Why was everyone looking at her with gritted teeth? Yi Lingfeng, who was on the side, immediately tried to smooth things over. "Everyone, I'm sorry. This is my distant cousin's first time in the imperial capital. She doesn't know what happened. Please don't take offense." Only then did those people withdraw the hostility in their eyes. Customer A said with a smile, "That's fine. After all, that was last year. The little girl is still young. It's normal that she doesn't know." Chu Qingyan immediately acted like a child. "What happened last year? Can you tell me?" As soon as she finished speaking, the handsome young man answered with a somewhat unpleasant expression. "This matter has to be told from a long time ago." Looking at his long-winded speech, Chu Qingyan immediately pulled the pastries in front of her closer to herself and prepared to listen to what he had to say. The origin of the story was like this. The intelligent and beautiful third princess had a crush on the second young Master Tang, the prime minister of the Jiang kingdom. This was a secret that everyone in the kingdom knew. Because the royal family only had these 3 children, their every move was watched by the common people. The third princess was His Majesty's treasure, and he loved her far more than the crown prince and the second prince. Everyone's eyes fell on her. No one knew how it got out, but the third princess had developed feelings for her childhood sweetheart, second young Master Tang. She had never hidden her feelings for him. The emperor of the Jiang kingdom and Prime Minister Tang also seemed to think highly of this pair of children and had never interfered with their relationship. Later, when the third princess was of marriageable age, which was in the early spring of last year, His Majesty decreed a marriage and betrothed the third princess to second young Master Tang. Everyone thought that this was a good match and made a good story. However, in the early summer of last year, when the two of them were just one step away from the wedding ceremony, the third princess suddenly lifted the veil and broke off the engagement. This matter greatly damaged the Tang family's reputation and also caused them to lose face. However, His Majesty of the Jiang Kingdom did not blame the third princess because of this. Instead, he rewarded the Tang family with many things and ordered the imperial court not to talk about this matter. However, the gossipy common people had already spread the news. Why did the engagement break off? Didn't they say that the two of them were a match made in heaven? Chu Qingyan was obviously so engrossed in the story that she even forgot to eat the pastry in her hand. That second young Master Tang must have done something to let the third princess down. Otherwise, how could such a kind and lovely third princess do something like breaking off the engagement? Guest A said angrily. That's right. The third princess is such a noble person. If she was willing to marry second young Master Tang, the Tang family would be laughing in their sleep. However, this kind of thing just had to happen at this juncture. Other than second young Master Tang doing something to let the princess down, we can't think of any other reason. Guest C snorted coldly. Although it had been a year and a half, this matter seemed to have happened just yesterday. This was because these guests looked very agitated, as if they wanted to skin second young Master Tang alive. However, it could be seen that the third princess was very popular among the common people. She unilaterally broke off the engagement, but no one stood out to criticize her. Instead, they stood on her side and scolded second young Master Tang as a heartless man. It was obvious that these people had successfully become fans of the third princess, and they were also brainless fans. What about the third princess now? Chu Qingyan felt that she couldn't judge the truth just based on their side of the story. Although she had a strong curiosity about the third princess just by listening to the common people's comments, she still wanted to collect information from other sources. The handsome young man who told the whole story was obviously also a brainless fan of the third princess. When he heard this question, he became dejected. Ever since the third princess left the imperial palace that time, she hasn't left. Even when the nobles usually hold banquets and invite her to appear, she didn't accept. Thinking about it, we haven't heard any news about the third princess for a year and a half. We miss her very much. That's right. It's all second young Master Tang's fault. Otherwise, our third princess would often go out of the imperial palace. My wife said that she once sold 5 kernel cakes to the third princess. Not only did the third princess give her enough money, she also gave my wife a jade bracelet. We plan to treat that jade bracelet as a family heirloom and pass it down from generation to generation. Guest B said with pride. Old man Lu, what does that bracelet look like? Show it to us. Someone jeered. That's right. We also want to see what the bracelet worn by the third princess looks like. Another person continued. I don't want it. Once I take it out, it will be snatched away by you. I'm not that stupid. Guest B looked nervous and regretted saying this. Chu Qingyan saw that the topic was diverted, so she didn't ask anything more. Because these people knew almost everything. Young Master E, is what they said just now true? Why do I feel that it's strange that someone didn't mention the one who broke off the engagement? Did they make a mistake? Chu Qingyan couldn't be blamed for thinking this way. She was inferring according to common sense. Yi Lingfeng shrugged. There is indeed such a thing, but I'm not very sure why the public opinion is all on second young Master Tang. I only know that when the third princess broke off the engagement, second young Master Tang didn't come out to explain anything. Also, I heard that someone spoke ill of the third princess behind her back and was beaten up by him. But it's all rumors. Just treat it as a story. Chu Qingyan squeezed the pastry in her hand slightly. Seeing that her fingertips were deeply embedded in the soft glutinous rice, she smiled mysteriously. No, I think that the more inexplicable something is, the more valuable it is to dig into it. This is very likely to be a breakthrough. She tilted her head and asked the person beside her, Big Ice Cube, what do you think? There must be something wrong when things are abnormal. Xiao Su said. Chapter 410. They sat in the tea house for a while and then went back home. Originally, Chu Qingyan wanted to walk around for a while longer. Unfortunately, those young ladies who knew about Yi Lingfeng's return surrounded their table, making it hard for them to advance or retreat. If they continued to walk around, they could imagine how chaotic the journey would be. In the end, everyone decided to return. As soon as they entered the mansion, Yi Lingfeng asked Xiao Su angrily without caring about his image, Brother, did you do all this? At this time, he did not care about his image. The folding fan in his hand was torn, a sleeve of the best Su-embroidered clothes was missing, and the boots that were clean and tidy when he went out had several footprints on them. Without looking in the mirror, he could imagine that his hair was like a chicken's nest. Young Master E, who had been wandering in the flower world for so many years, had never been so down and out like today. Along the way, many people looked at him and laughed, but no one thought that he was Yi Lingfeng, who was famous in the capital for his handsome appearance. Today, he had lost a lot of face. "I don't understand what you are talking about." His voice rose at the end, indicating that he was in a good mood. Yi Lingfeng took a deep breath and chanted several times in his heart, "Don't be angry." Then, he brushed the hair that was scattered in front of his forehead and roared calmly, "You bastard, tell me the truth. Did you reveal my whereabouts? I just stepped into the capital and someone followed me, saying that no one deliberately spread the news. I don't believe it. And who else knows about my return except for you?" It had to be said that someone who could make the self-proclaimed gentle and elegant young Master Yi so angry had crossed his bottom line. But would Xiao Su care? No, he was happy to see it happen. So what if it was me? Xiao Su sat down in the middle of the hall. He was dressed in a black robe with golden edges of maple leaves. His every movement was leisurely, without the slightest trace of regret. "Xiao Su, you are haggling over every little thing. I just schemed against you once, why are you so serious?" Xiao Su's unhurried voice made Yi Tianyun jump up and down, not caring about his image at all. "I'm just haggling over every penny. You don't have to take it seriously." Xiao Su successfully provoked Yi Lingfeng again by talking about rich girls. Compared to his good friend's unbridled elegance, he himself was down and out. He was worse than a beggar in the corner. Yi Lingfeng felt his anger burn, but he couldn't do anything to him. He could only sigh and go down to change his clothes. He couldn't parade around in such tattered clothes. If he wanted to settle the score, there was plenty of time. Yi Lingfeng left angrily. When he passed by Duguqing, he heard her gritting her teeth and adding insult to his injury. "Serves you right. You reap what you sow." He clenched his fists and left without saying a word. Chu Qingyan, who had watched Yi Lingfeng explode, could not help but give her big iceberg a thumbs up. She said generously, "Well done." Xiao Su raised his eyebrows, accepting her praise. Without Yi Lingfeng, Duguqing felt bored and left. Father Chu carried the pastries he bought along the way to share them with his wife. Only Xiao Su, Chu Qingyan, and Turan Hualing were left in the hall. The atmosphere of laughter faded away. Chu Qingyan sat on the side, holding a teacup in her hand. Her expression was a bit distant. Although they left in a hurry today and some accidents happened on the way, they still collected a lot of information. One was that Jiang country's emperor invited a senior monk to recite scriptures in the palace. The meaning was unclear. Another was that Jiang country's palace was infiltrated by an assassin a few days ago. The assassin's whereabouts were still unknown. Another was that Jiang country's third princess did not step out of the palace gate for a year and a half. It was as if she had disappeared. There were many suspicious points about the annulment of the engagement. Although these three matters sounded insignificant, for this impregnable Jiang country's imperial capital, these matters were already rare clues. Clues? They were not here to solve the case. Instead, they wanted to find out the information they wanted from a secure place. They had to find a breakthrough and then unravel it bit by bit. It was only a rumor that the ice crystal flower was in Jiang country's imperial palace. However, they wanted to confirm whether Jiang country's emperor really had the ice crystal flower. In Jiang country, except for Yi Lingfeng, they were isolated and helpless. Everything in Jiang country was strange to them. "Master, our people have started to take action. Now the focus is on brothels, tea houses, and casinos. Let's see if we can find out any information about the ice crystal flower from these places." Turin stood in front of his master and said seriously. Jiang country used the blue impatiens as its national flower, so the people preferred blue. Then they brought this hobby into their daily lives. For example, blue decorations, blue clothes, and blue buildings were everywhere. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. In order to better blend into Jiang country's imperial capital and make it easier for them to gather information, Turin was wearing a blue ice silk robe. His usual serious expression seemed to have added some youthful vigor to it. On the other hand, Hualing was wearing a light blue calamus patterned robe. His usual smiling face had faded away from his usual lively temperament. He added, "We don't have a topographic map of Jiang country's imperial palace. It's not good to rashly investigate at night. This subordinate has asked young Master Yi to help us to see if we can get a map. This subordinate plans to search the imperial palace when the time is right. It would be best if we can find the ice crystal flower. If not, we will cross off the imperial palace as our target." Hualing and Turin's plan was also to prepare for a rainy day. One focused on investigating the imperial capital, while the other focused on the imperial palace. The ice crystal flower was a rare medicinal herb. It had been extinct for decades. Its most recent whereabouts was in Jiang country's imperial palace. No matter what, they would not let go of any suspicious clues. What if the ice crystal flower is not in Jiang country's imperial capital? Although she did not want to say this hypothesis, it was better to be safe than sorry. Turin and Hualing were silent. They had also considered this possibility. Water Spirit has already asked Xiao Lai cavalry to search the various countries. If there is any news, they will send it over. Xiao Su knew her worries. However, it was hard to say whether this method of searching for a needle in a haystack would succeed. Not wanting the big ice cube to be affected by her emotions, Chu Qingyan forced a smile and said, "Don't be afraid. Xiao Lai cavalry is so powerful. They will definitely find it. Not only the ice crystal flower, but also the love grass." Chu Qingyan clenched her fists. They were already in Jiang country. There were still 40 days left. They would definitely be able to find it. Xiao Su pondered for a moment and said, "The ice crystal flower is extremely resistant to cold. When you are searching, pay special attention to places with ice cellars." Turin and Hualing immediately acknowledged and retreated. Xiao Su turned his head and saw the little fellow standing at the window, looking at the darkening sky without blinking. He got up and walked over, standing beside her. "Will I see snow before the new year? Maybe. I had a dream last night. I dreamed that the sky was full of snowflakes. The snow was so high that it reached my knees. However, I was very happy because I saw the ice crystal flower at my feet. The rarer something is, the more precious it is. At that time, the ice crystal flower in front of me was as free as cabbage. I could play with it. What you think about during the day, you dream about it at night." Xiao Su put his hand on her shoulder, but did not say anything. Chapter 411. It would be New Year's Eve in a month. She hoped that by New Year's, she would be able to find those two herbs. She hoped it would come true. But dreams were plentiful, while reality was always thin. In a flash, 3 days had passed. Regarding the ice crystal flower, whether it was Yi Lingfeng or Hualing, none of them had found anything. Yi Lingfeng tried to find out the identity of the great master, but because the person was mysterious and the Jiang country's emperor deliberately hid it, no one knew the identity of the great master monk. The imperial palace of the Jiang kingdom was more heavily guarded than before. Everyone kept their mouths shut about the assassination, saying that they were ordered by their superiors not to leak any information. As for the matter of the third princess, there was no clue at all. It was as if she had vanished into thin air in the past 1.5 years, and no one could find any trace of her. Everything seemed to have fallen into an endless cycle. Hualing and the others did not say anything, but they were already feeling anxious. They left early and returned late, so busy that their feet did not even touch the ground. Chu Qingyan looked at the big ice cube playing chess with himself without revealing anything. She felt a bit relieved in her heart. The big ice cube's body was not suitable for worrying about these things, and she could not just sit there and wait for death. Chu Qingyan immediately returned to her room and changed her female clothes into men's clothes. She did not think too much and returned to Xiao Su's room. "Big ice cube, I'm going out shopping with big sister Dugu. Is there anything you want to buy? I'll bring it back for you." Chu Qingyan leaned against the door frame and poked her head out to ask him. Xiao Su's hand paused as he heard her voice and turned to look at her. She was dressed in a simple young man's outfit, and her hair was tied up high with a blue ribbon. At this moment, because of her movements, her hair was hanging down from her shoulders. Her white and jade-like fingers were dotted with dark red dots, making her look cute and pretty. She was still young, and it was hard to tell if she was a male or female in men's clothing. Walking outside, she could confuse others. The corners of her eyes were smiling, and she looked like a child who was about to go out and ask an elder before leaving. Xiao Su's slightly furrowed brows relaxed the moment he saw her. Go early and come back early. He thought that she would be worried after not hearing any news for a few days, but now that he saw her vitality, he relaxed. All right. Chu Qingyan smiled. When she left in a flash, the smile on her face disappeared. She could be anxious and sad, but she couldn't show it in front of Big Ice. Because emotions were contagious, she didn't want him to be affected by her. As the light footsteps slowly walked away, Xiao Su pinched his brows and threw down the black chess piece in his hand. He stood by the window, his black hair like clouds, his posture straight and stern, his brows slightly furrowed. No one could tell what he was thinking from those eyes that were as deep as the sea. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already walked to the entrance of the mansion. Duguqing was waiting there impatiently. Why are you dilly-dallying? If you delay any longer, it will be dark soon, do you understand? Duguqing hurriedly scolded her, then pulled her hand and quickly walked down the street, while Jin Xen followed closely behind. When they walked to the downtown area, Duguqing was playing with the things on the stalls and turned to ask her, You suddenly invited me out to play today. Do you have anything you want to buy? The rouge and face powder in the water plum pavilion are not bad. Do you want to take a look? Chu Qingyan heard this and shook her head. I didn't come out to buy anything. That's strange. Don't tell me you came out to enjoy the scenery? Duguqing put down the things in her hand and walked to her. If you want to enjoy the scenery, you shouldn't go to Wanjing Market, but to the West City. There is a plum forest there. You can take this opportunity to enjoy the plum blossoms. No, I also didn't come here to enjoy the scenery. I want to go to a crowded place and listen to the gossip of the people. Chu Qingyan showed 8 standard teeth and gave a flattering smile to the black-faced Duguqing in front of her. Duguqing held her forehead. I thought you came out to play. I didn't know you had this idea. Forget it, I'll be a good person to the end and help the Buddha to the West. Come with me, I know there is a gathering place for gossip here, but Chu Qingyan was happy to see her agree, but made her tremble. But what? Duguqing revealed a sly smile. Your little heart must be able to take it. Chu Qingyan shrugged, showing that she was not stressed at all. Before going to the gathering place for gossip, Duguqing took Chu Qingyan to a ready-made clothing store, changed into men's clothes, and then set off. Sister Dugu, I found that you look pretty good in men's clothes. Chu Qingyan looked at the person in front of her. A green jade pendant was tied around her waist, and her hair was tied up with a white jade hairpin. Her skin was fair and clean, and there was a hint of vermilion on her lips. She was different from her usual bright and beautiful appearance, and more charming. Duguqing turned slightly when she heard this, and the sapphire blue corset skirt she was wearing drew a beautiful arc at her feet. She raised her index finger and tapped her chin, smiling contentedly. Actually, I look quite similar to my younger brother when I wear men's clothes. Little Qingyan, do you know that I have a twin brother? He's quite good-looking. I'll introduce you to him if there's a chance. Chu Qingyan did not expect that she had a twin brother, and could not help but nod. Okay. But who would have thought that by the time they met, they would already be strangers? It's getting late, let's set off. Duguqing pulled her towards the crowd. Later, don't call me sister, call me brother. As for you, you're my younger brother, so you'll be called Dugution. I'll lend you his name for the time being. Speaking of him, I kind of miss him. I don't know where that brat went. Duguqing nagged along the way. Dugution? Did the combination of the siblings' names mean Qing Tian? Chu Qingyan's lips curved. They must be a pair of siblings who had a good relationship. When Duguqing brought Chu Qingyan to stand in front of a building, Chu Qingyan looked at the words on the signboard and resisted the urge to twitch her eyes. This is? She pointed at the building, somewhat in disbelief. Duguqing smiled and said in a normal manner, a gathering place for gossip. The moment she finished speaking, the women who heard the commotion stood on the second floor, waving their handkerchiefs at them. 2 young masters, Come and have a drink, we have the best wine here. Do you want to listen to a little song? I guarantee that you'll come with worries and leave with no worries. Chu Qingyan put down her hand, and her eyes swept over the male guests coming in and out. The astonishment on her face was immediately replaced by a smile, and she did not show the slightest bit of stage fright. It had to be said that this was indeed a gathering place for gossip. Duguqing originally thought that she would back out, but she did not expect her to adapt so well. She could not help but shrug. Then let's go in. Chu Qingyan nodded, and before she took a step, she suddenly said to the person beside her, I realize that you and Yi Lingfeng actually have some similarities, such as this. Her voice trailed off, with a hint of a smile. Duguqing's face darkened. She was actually teased by this 10-year-old child. This person was really the same as Xiao Su, haggling over the smallest details. Chapter 412. Heavenly Fragrance Brothel. It was a place of debauchery at night and elegance during the day. It was not an ordinary brothel because the brothel did not accept guests during the day and was exceptionally lively at night. During the day, it was still extraordinarily lively. Because the owner of Heavenly Fragrance Brothel was very good at doing business, the guests at night were all beauties, while the guests during the day were mostly artists who knew how to play the zither, go, poetry, and painting. If you thought that the people who came here during the day were all young talents, then you were wrong. Some rich people, or peddlers, also liked to experience this kind of cultured life. Scholars, merchants, commoners, officials, there were only people that you could not imagine, there was no one that you could not see. When Chu Qingyan and Duguqing stepped into Heavenly Fragrance Brothel, a nanny who was in charge came up. She first bowed to them, then smiled and said, Do the two of you want to listen to the zither, watch the dance, or play chess? Guests, please feel free to tell us, we guarantee that you will be satisfied here. Chu Qingyan glanced at the hall downstairs. It was a red building and the walls were hung with either ink paintings or zither and flute. Between the first floor and the second floor, there was a sky building, and the rooms were separated. There were tables and chairs, but no doors. If one wanted to avoid suspicion, they could roll up the curtains and close them. It was just past noon, and there were already many people sitting downstairs and in the sky building. Some were dressed in luxurious clothes, and some were dressed in official robes. Although they were of different statuses, there was a graceful woman by their side. These women did not have the aura of a prostitute, but rather looked very much like a young lady from a wealthy family. They were full of jade and delicate makeup. Some were grinding ink, some were playing chess, some were playing the zither, and some were dancing. At first glance, it really looked like a place filled with the fragrance of books. We will just sit on the first floor. I want two ladies who are good at grinding ink, not too quiet. It would be better if they can accompany us brothers to talk and relieve our boredom. Duguqing was like a regular customer and did not choose from the nanny, but directly ordered. Just as Chu Qingyan was sizing up the Heavenly Fragrance restaurant, the granny was also sizing up the two of them without revealing anything. The people who worked in this kind of place all had a pair of discerning eyes. They didn't care if the person was male or female, old or young, as long as they could afford it, they would accept it. The two of them were dressed in extraordinary clothes, and their every movement carried the demeanor of an aristocratic family. Even the guards behind them, although young, had an aura that couldn't be ignored. The mama had a plan in mind and agreed to Duguqing's request with a smile. Good, good, good. Two young masters, this way please. Our young lady will be here soon. As she spoke, she signaled with her eyes for a servant girl to lead the two to their seats. Chu Qingyan stopped looking around and followed behind Duguqing. Since she was familiar with this place, she just had to follow her closely. Not long after he sat down, two delicate and pretty ladies walked over. One of them was holding a piece of paper, while the other was holding a brush and an inkstone. If it was any other place, one would really think that they were the maids of a prestigious family. Ing Mo greets the two young masters. The lady dressed in light green bowed with a faint smile. Ing Yen greets the two young masters. The lady dressed in light yellow bowed with a faint smile. Chu Qingyan looked at the two of them without saying anything. From their voices, she could tell that they were lively women. They weren't bashful or delicate. You don't have to be so formal. Grind the ink. Duguqing didn't stand on ceremony and directly ordered. After that, she whispered to Chu Qingyan, "In this kind of place, the more polite you are to them, the more it means that you are a newcomer and don't know the rules. Later, they will trick you." Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes, indicating that she understood. Although she didn't know what kind of trick she would be tricked in this place, since Duguqing said so, she would do as she was told. How should I address the two young masters? Ingemo put the plate on the table and took out an inkstone while asking, "I'm Dugutian. This is my brother, Duguqing." Chu Qingyan said naturally and generously. Duguqing nodded secretly. Ingyen spread the rice paper and then turned to ask, "Are the two young masters here to read poems and write couplets?" Chu Qingyan's eyes began to pay attention to the people around and said perfunctorily. Duguqing knew what she was thinking. When she picked up the brush, she said to Ingyen and Ingemo, "My brother just finished the private school. I guess he doesn't want to write now. One of you can talk with him." Ingyen and Ingemo nodded with a smile. Chu Qingyan held her chin with one hand and watched Duguqing write. She asked casually, "Did anything interesting happen in the street recently? Tell me about it. After listening to the teachers nagging for a day, my ears are going to grow calluses." Ingyen was standing by the side. When he heard Chu Qingyan's words, he thought for a moment and said, "It's very quiet outside, and it seems like nothing big has happened. However, we heard quite a few interesting things in the Heaven Fragrance Inn." Chu Qingyan pretended to be surprised. She took out a silver ingot from her pocket and put it on the table. She looked like a young master who didn't know much about the world. She said with a smile, "If you can tell me something that makes me feel comfortable, I'll give you a lot of silver." Just now, the mama told them that these two young masters were rich and noble. She asked them to treat them well. They didn't expect them to be so generous. Ingyen and Ingemo immediately responded with an alas. Ingyen picked out a rumor from these days and said, "Young Master Tian, do you know that official Yang divorced his wife a few days ago?" Official Yang? Chu Qingyan was puzzled. Why did he suddenly divorce his wife? Looking at her, she knew that she had never heard of it. Ingyen said, "Official Yang is the Minister of War of our Jiang Kingdom. I heard that a few days ago, he took his family to the Buddhist temple to participate in the sacrifice. Mrs. Yang said to her daughter that a girl should know her place and not be willful like other princesses. She lost her marriage and her face, so she didn't dare to come out for a long time. I don't know how this matter got out. Official Yang was fined half a year's salary and demoted by 1 rank. Then, Official Yang went home and wrote a letter to divorce Mrs. Yang." Chu Qingyan sighed inwardly. This Jiang Kingdom's emperor really doted on this third princess. He didn't even allow others to gossip about her, but it was difficult to stop everyone from talking. She could only say that this was the pitiful love of a parent. However, Ingyen brought out the information she wanted to inquire about. Of all the things Mistress Yang could have said, she just had to talk about the third princess. She really reaped what she sowed. Chu Qingyan sighed and went straight to the point. "Then have you heard why the third princess broke off the engagement? I've always heard rumors, but I don't know what happened. Do you know the inside story?" Ingyen thought for a while. "I heard about it last year, but I don't know whether it's true or not." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but say, "Miss Ingyen, please tell me." Chapter 413. Ingyen thought that this matter had been discussed thousands of times, so she did not avoid it. She said calmly, "The third princess broke off the engagement in the early summer of last year. At that time, the third princess's wedding sedan had already arrived at the Tang mansion. They were about to perform the wedding ceremony, but the third princess was thinking about something at that time. No matter how the matron of honor indicated, she did not bow to heaven and earth. Just when everyone was wondering, the third princess suddenly opened her mouth and seemed to ask if second young Master Tang really wanted to marry her." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan could not help but be puzzled. Wasn't it too strange to ask the groom at such a crucial time? Did something happen before the wedding ceremony? It had to be said that Chu Qingyan was sensitive. She did receive a message before Jiang Yunyao performed the wedding ceremony, and this message led to her sudden decision. Then what happened? Dugu Qing, who was writing, immediately asked. Chu Qingyan felt that people were always gossipy when it came to such matters between men and women. For example, Dugu Qing, who was in front of her, pricked up her ears while writing, but she was also curious. Later, I don't know what second young Master Tang said, but the third princess lifted the veil and ordered people to stop the marriage on the spot. Then she said to second young Master Tang that the 9-day sweet dew was my gift for breaking off the engagement. Finally, she apologized to the two elders of the Tang family and returned to the imperial palace with the palace maids and bodyguards. What a straightforward woman! As a woman, Dugu Qing could not help but praise. 9-day sweet dew? Chu Qingyan, who had been listening carefully, caught the words. She felt that the third princess suddenly mentioned this thing at that time, so it must be very important. Otherwise, she could have said gold, silver, jewelry, or silk. Why did she only mention this thing? It sounded like the name of a medicine. Seeing Chu Qingyan repeat these words, Ingyamo, who was grinding the ink, explained, "This 9-day sweet dew is a very precious pill. I heard that third young Miss Tang has a very serious illness, and the doctor once said that this illness cannot be cured without the 9-day sweet dew." Presumably, the third princess felt guilty for breaking off the engagement, so she used the 9-day sweet dew as an apology gift. A marriage in exchange for a life. It sounds quite worth it. Dugu Qing stopped writing and nodded. The third princess is a kind person, and the people of the Jiang kingdom have received many favors from her. Although the third princess broke off the engagement, in our hearts, she is still a good princess who loves her people as her children. However, Chu Qingyan shook her head in her heart. This matter was not that simple. How could a princess who had broken off her engagement say such things so rationally? She must have made the decision after hearing second young Master Tang's words. Chu Qingyan really wanted to know what second young Master Tang had said at that time. Moreover, the 9 days dew was the key to breaking off the engagement. Otherwise, she would not have coincidentally delivered it to third young Mistress Tang when she was lacking it. If Jiang Yunyao knew what Chu Qingyan was thinking, she would probably give her a thumbs up. However, many people speculate that it was second young Master Tang who let third princess down. Ingyamo placed the paper that Dugu Qing had written on the table and replaced it with new paper before continuing. Why? Chu Qingyan's hand that was holding the teacup paused, and she looked at her with wide eyes. Seeing that she was fascinated, Ingyamo said, "Because after this matter, second young Master Tang locked himself in his room for 3 days and 3 nights. When he came out, he was very haggard. When his friends mentioned this matter, he said that it had nothing to do with the third princess and that it was not her fault. Later, he also forbade others to talk about this matter. So many people said that second young Master Tang was arrogant. If second young Master Tang did not have a guilty conscience, why would he do this?" Hearing Ingmo's explanation, Chu Qingyan was even more certain that there was something fishy about this matter. But as time passed, it was useless for her to investigate further. However, she admired such a straightforward woman. If there was a chance, she would like to meet this third princess. The name of this 9 days dew sounds very interesting. Today, I also saw a few unique names of medicine in a book. Let me test you. Do you know what they are? Chu Qingyan did not waste her breath on this matter of breaking off the engagement. Instead, she took the opportunity to draw out Duan Qing's purpose. Dugu Qing glanced at Chu Qingyan. This little Qingyan was quite smart. She knew how to throw a brick to attract jade. This little girl does not know many names of medicine, but there is no harm in asking young Master Tian. Perhaps you will hit the jackpot. Ing Yan's words were pleasing. Coupled with the mischievous smile on his face, it made people feel comfortable getting along with him. Chu Qingyan secretly nodded. The girls cultivated by this heavenly fragrance brothel were really different from the girls of other brothels. But if you know, this young master will reward you handsomely. Chu Qingyan did not mind playing the role of a rich second generation. She had not experienced it before, but now she was satisfied. Ing Yen and Ing Yamo nodded even more seriously. It was rare to meet a young master who squandered money like dirt. Have you heard of mugwort leaves? Chu Qingyan started from the simplest and progressed step by step. Only then would it not be too abrupt. Ing Mo knows mugwort leaves. In summer, when the flowers have not yet bloomed, the leaves are plucked and dried. It can stop bleeding and treat typhoid. Ing Mo spoke clearly and logically. Chu Qingyan nodded in appreciation. These girls had indeed been trained. They were involved in many aspects. What about planting grass? Chu Qingyan continued to ask. A few days ago, this little girl saw Big Sister Yen taking planting grass. She said that this herb has the effect of dispelling phlegm and suppressing coughs. Is Ing Yen right? Ing Yen was not to be outdone. You're all right. These are your rewards. Chu Qingyan took out 2 ingots of silver from her sleeve and placed them in their hands. Ing Yen and Ing Mo had never seen so much silver. They immediately bowed and thanked her. This little brother of mine has a strange hobby. If someone makes him happy, he likes to reward them. Dugu Qing shook her head helplessly. When the two heard Chu Qingyan's words, they were very excited. They hoped that Chu Qingyan would ask a few more questions. This was more than what they could get by serving people for half a year. The thoughts on their faces were exactly what Chu Qingyan wanted. You are too smart. Let me think of a difficult one. She pretended to ponder for a moment and then said, That's right. In this world, there is a kind of herb called ice crystal flower. Have you heard of it? Ice crystal flower? Ing Yen and Ing Mo looked at each other. They were a little confused. Chu Qingyan did not plan to get any information from them immediately. Since this was a place where all sorts of people would gather, she might as well bribe them with money. They would definitely think of ways to find out more information about the ice crystal flower. The ladies of the Wind, Flower, Snow, and Moon Pavilion naturally had their own methods and information network. They might even be able to get the information faster than Hualing and the others. When Chu Qingyan was about to open her mouth, there was a sudden commotion from the side. She subconsciously turned her head and unexpectedly met a pair of charming phoenix eyes. Chapter 414. Where did such a handsome Gongzi come from? If I can get his attention, I can die without regrets. He looked at me, I fainted. Chu Qingyan listened to those chattering voices and felt helpless. Why did this person always appear with the special effect of, I'm a disaster because of my good looks? He's coming towards us? Ing Mo whispered excitedly. Chu Qingyan looked helplessly at the person strolling over. She really didn't want to say the same thing to those people who pretended to meet Yi Lingfeng. Unfortunately, he was already here. She couldn't just turn a blind eye to him, right? What a coincidence, Dongting. She sighed inwardly, then lazily raised her smile. It seems like you don't welcome this Gongzi very much? The person who came was Higashio Motetsu, dressed in a flirtatious purple robe. The collar of his brocade robe had a circle of high-quality fox fur, which made his lips red and teeth white. He was tall and slender. He slightly bent over, approaching her with a smile that was somewhat unsightly. Chu Qingyan inconspicuously leaned back, increasing the distance between the two of them. She said innocently, Welcome, but I didn't expect you to appear here. Higashio Motetsu didn't mind. He pulled a chair and sat down, looking at her with a lazy and unrestrained expression. The world is vast. I didn't expect to meet an old acquaintance just by walking around. It's fate. He deliberately emphasized the word, fate, his smile somewhat unclear. Chu Qingyan glanced at him, muttering inwardly, Don't think I don't know you. You obviously knew that we were coming to Jiang country, so you deliberately followed us. But after shouting this in her heart, Chu Qingyan was somewhat puzzled. What was this person's purpose for following them? If he had a purpose, he was well behaved. If he didn't have a purpose, he could see her everywhere. She didn't believe that there were so many coincidences in the world. There were only man-made encounters, and there weren't repeated coincidences. This is... Dugu Qing, who had been ignored by the two, put down the pen in her hand and looked suspiciously at the handsome man who had suddenly appeared. This was the first time she had seen a man who was able to combine gorgeous and handsome without any sense of dissonance. The man looked like a woman, escaping without a trace, shining brilliantly. Even though she had seen so many handsome men before, she couldn't help but stare blankly. Fortunately, she already had someone in her heart. Otherwise, she might have really been bewitched. Let me introduce you. This is Dugu-ching, and this is Higashio Motetsu, my good friend. Chu Qingyan introduced the two. Higashio Motetsu looked at Dugu-ching and raised his hand. Nice to meet you. Dugu-ching also replied. Seeing that the atmosphere between the two was a little strange, Dugu-ching thought for a moment and set up another table to give the two some space. Higashio Motetsu nodded in satisfaction at Dugu-ching's tactfulness. Ing Yen and Ing Yamo were also taken away by Dugu-ching. The distance between each table was not close. If the two spoke in a low voice, no one would hear. Little girl, do you owe me a favor? Higashio Motetsu poured himself a cup of tea, as if the words came out of his mouth. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. These words surprised her. She didn't remember owing him any favor. Higashio Motetsu saw her reaction and pretended to hold his heart. Little girl, you have deeply hurt me. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have saved you. Looking at his posture, Chu Qingyan had the urge to facepalm. A perfectly good man actually acted like a little girl. What kind of appearance was that? But she had to admit that even if he held his heart and held his heart, it didn't make people feel disgusted. Instead, it had a different kind of feeling. Sure enough, this was a world that looked at faces. Are you talking about that time when I fainted from a fever in the forest? Chu Qingyan remembered the last time they met. When she woke up, she was in the medical center. That's right. You are not too heartless. You can still be saved. In the blink of an eye, he put away the heart-holding posture. He still had the soul-stirring and enchanting appearance. Just now, his expression was like a flash in the pan. She had already experienced this person's ability to change his expression, so she wasn't surprised. But she also had a debt to settle with him. I didn't expect you to take the initiative to mention it. I forgot about it, Chu Qingyan snorted. The people in the medical center said that when they opened the door, they saw me lying on the ground. Didn't you know that I was having a high fever at that time? It was freezing cold, but you just casually threw me aside. Weren't you worried that I would get sick? Higashio Motetsu glanced at her. Aren't you still fine now? Besides, if I hadn't been so kind, you would probably have reported to the King of Hell by now. Chu Qingyan continued to snort. Anyway, we're even. I don't owe you a favor, and you don't owe me anything. Higashio Motetsu was amused by her. His voice was so moving that it was like a spring breeze brushing past his delicate and flawless cheeks. His silky black hair draped over his shoulders. As his shoulders shook, it drew a beautiful arc around his waist. Little girl, are you afraid that I will use this opportunity to blackmail you into doing something? After he laughed, his phoenix eyes were still a little dizzy, but his words hit the nail on the head. Chu Qingyan was taken aback. She did not expect him to be so straightforward. She tapped her finger on the teacup and twirled it around on the table. A faint smile appeared on her exquisite face as she said, "There are some things that you should know in your heart. Why should you say it out loud?" He originally wanted to see the little girl's expression change, but he didn't expect her to admit it directly. Higashio Motetsu picked up the teacup to hide the surprise on his face. After clearing his throat, he said, "It's true that heroes come from generation to generation. I can't win against you." As soon as he finished speaking, he changed the topic. According to the schedule, you arrived at the capital of Jiang Kingdom nearly half a month later. It's obvious that you encountered some trouble. The topic just now stopped and they didn't mention it again. Both of them had a tacit understanding. We did encounter some trouble, but it's all in the past. Chu Qingyan continued circling the table, thinking about how to make Ing Yen and Ing Yamo not suspect her and willingly help her inquire about the news. Have you found those two things? Higashio Motetsu saw that she didn't seem to want to talk about what happened on the way, so he didn't force her. Anyway, he had already guessed most of it. She had mentioned the ice crystal flower and the love grass to him before. She wasn't surprised that he asked about it now. Is there any more? There's no news at all. Chu Qingyan shook her head, looking a little helpless. Those two things are rare in the world. If you want to know their whereabouts, I'm afraid you have to take some unusual paths to find some clues. Higashio Motetsu said slowly. The fingers circling the table paused. Chu Qingyan immediately raised her head and looked at him intently. You have a way? Higashio Motetsu tapped the table with his fingers. Seeing her looking at him nervously, he suddenly smiled and leaned closer to her. Little girl, beg me. Chapter 415. Little girl, beg me. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she had the urge to smash his head open with a hammer. That was enough. Chu Qingyan turned her head away and missed his breath. Dongting, stop fooling around. Stop fooling around? Was she treating him like a child? Higashio Motetsu's eyes twitched, but his tone was good as he said, If you beg me, maybe I'll tell you when I'm happy. Chu Qingyan's lips curved into a creepy smile. You wish. Higashio Motetsu saw her reaction and narrowed his eyes. He leaned back against the chair and said with a smile, Little girl, don't you want to know the fastest way? Whether you say it or not, the initiative is in your hands. You want me to beg you? Then forget it. Chu Qingyan shrugged indifferently. Higashio Motetsu did not force her and said casually, In another 30 days, the poison will take effect. It's a pity that the king of this region died at such a young age. But this also makes those who are eyeing him covetously and want to get rid of this thorn in their side happy. When he said this, he gave a low chuckle. This young master has seen a lot of this kind of situation where the people close to him are sad and the enemies happy. Little girl, you're really ruthless. Seeing that Chu Qingyan was unmoved, Higashio Motetsu took a sip of tea and then unexpectedly stood up. He shook his sleeves and looked like he was about to leave. Little girl, this tea is not bad. Consider it as repayment for saving my life. It's getting late, this young master should go back. I hope that we will have a chance to meet again in the future. She knew that he was certain that she would not let him go. But she did not know what his motive was. She was afraid that if she blindly agreed to him, it would cause harm to herself or the big ice cube. Chu Qingyan tightened her grip on the teacup, and it fell onto the table with a thud. She looked up at him from the corner of her eyes. The struggle in her eyes was obvious, but it quickly settled down. Her voice was as calm as before. What conditions do you have? Higashio Motetsu wasn't surprised when he saw her relaxed expression. He knew that she was willing to do anything for Xiao Su. On that rainy night, he had already seen how fearless she was. It was hard for him to imagine that a little girl could have so much courage when she exploded. As a result, his heart was somewhat unconvinced. Why would such a cold person like Xiao Su have such a woman to sacrifice for him? Suddenly, he felt somewhat indignant. However, this was just an occasional emotion, and he didn't pay much attention to it. Especially when he found out that she had appeared at Heavenly Fragrance House, a touch of joy surfaced in his heart. He couldn't wait to see her. He liked to see her being bullied by him until she was deflated, but she didn't dare to speak up. Higashio Motetsu moved and sat down again. He poured himself a cup of tea, but he wasn't in a hurry to drink it. Instead, he looked up and looked at her magnanimously. Little girl, don't think of this young master so badly. I was just teasing you earlier. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes at him. You're so playful. He raised his eyebrows and smiled. If I really asked you to exchange conditions with this young master, would you agree? Knowing that he was really joking earlier, Chu Qingyan's heart heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing that he was teasing her, she didn't take it to heart. That depends on what conditions. Cheating, swindling, stealing, killing, arson, robbing, violating filial piety and etiquette, don't even think about it. She really was a little girl with strong principles. She killed all the unstable elements in one fell swoop. Higashio Motetsu didn't say much either. He raised his hand and tapped the tea in the cup, then wrote on the table. Chu Qingyan leaned over and saw the words that appeared on the table. She softly read, Underground Blue Manor. She looked at the person beside her in confusion. What is this place? Higashio Motetsu smiled. His index finger and thumb rested on his cheek as he slowly said, "Underground Blue Manor, this is the underground city of Jiang country's trade. It's not bound by any imperial authority, and there's no distinction between good and evil. It's a mysterious organization hidden among the common people." "Similar to a black market trade?" Chu Qingyan asked thoughtfully. "That's about the same thing. Every country has a trade city like this. They hide underground, and every operation is very secretive. No one knows where they are located or who the participants are. Those who can receive an invitation are not all rich and noble people. They don't limit their status. As long as you have rare treasures or unique skills that others don't have, you have a chance to ask for an invitation. Every time, the participants will know the approximate location of the event within an hour before the event begins." Higashio Motetsu patiently explained. "So mysterious?" Chu Qingyan frowned. Higashio Motetsu glanced at her. "An organization that can wander around the imperial authority and exist for a long time must have its uniqueness. Many emperors want to get rid of it, but sometimes even the imperial family can't handle it. They have to rely on such a trade city. Those who participate in the trade, some are seriously ill, some have peerless medical skills, some have deep hatred, some are famous killers, some are thirsty for talent, and some are full of wisdom. But they all take what they need." She suddenly understood and looked at Higashio Motetsu. "So what you're trying to say is that I might be able to get some information in this trade city?" Higashio Motetsu nodded. "The things that can be taken out in the trade city are not ordinary. Rare gems, herbs, unique skills, weapons. You can basically see them all inside, but what?" Chu Qingyan's scalp tightened. What she hated the most were unexpected twists and turns, which made people whet their appetites. If you want to get something you like, you must also have something that you can take out. If you have something and the other party doesn't want to exchange it, you'll be happy for nothing. Higashio Motetsu tapped the table with one hand and said to her from the side. He had said all the ugly words in advance and asked her to consider it carefully. "I understand this rule." Chu Qingyan nodded and then asked, "Then when will the trade in this underground Blue Manor start?" This little girl was quite impatient. "You're considered lucky. 3 months ago, the underground Blue Manor held a trade in Junlan. I heard that it will be held again in 2 days in the Jiang Kingdom." Higashio Motetsu said leisurely. His expression was languid as he leaned on the table. He didn't sit properly, but it didn't make people dislike him. Instead, they felt that such an outstanding person, no matter what he did, would be glorious and dazzling. "That's great. It's better to come at the right time than to come early. Then can you take me there?" Chu Qingyan immediately smiled and asked. Higashio Motetsu glanced at her and shook his head with a low laugh. "Little girl, do you think that you can casually enter this kind of place?" Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes and was a little annoyed. "If I can't enter, then why are you still talking so much nonsense with me?" Higashio Motetsu saw that she was about to explode again and couldn't help but laugh. "I said that you can't casually enter, but I didn't say that this young master can't enter." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.